Okay. Hear that.
All right, thank you for attending. It's April 7th, 6:31 PM in our budget workshop. We have a long agenda tonight, so bear with us. We need somewhere to sit. We got another or seat. We got one right here. You need a seat. Up first, we're going to start with, we're gonna go a little out of order from what your agenda might be on. We're gonna get some of the small ones out of the way. So up first is gonna be B34, the Connecticut Partnership for Children and Community Services. Hello and welcome.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I just wanted to thank you for allowing me to be here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jill Mahoney. I'm the Executive Director of Connecticut Partnership for Children, and we have been working in Naugatuck since 2009.
Sorry, Jill, 1 second. We're just finding them in our binders.
It's in the front. It's in the front.
Oh, it's in the front of your binders for those that are
In the-
here in person. Sorry, we're a little discombobulated. I don't want you to get too far and then we're like, what?
She's got a whole bunch of attachments here. Absolutely. Sure.
So on your, in the front of your binder, it'll say Community Service Budget FY26, page 1 of 1. And we're looking at the last line, item B34. Sorry, go ahead, Jill. Thank
No
you.
problem. So we have been in Naugatuck since 2009, formerly Naugatuck Discovery. And premature to that, we were, Naugatuck Partnership for Children. Premature to that, we were Naugatuck Discovery. We are a 501c nonprofit that works to support families within Naugatuck to ensure that children are healthy, safe, successful learners with actively engaged families. And the purpose for us being here is a request for the borough to help support us for $30,000 this year. And that would be to hire an additional part-time case manager and to expand current hours for our current case managers. This will allow us to meet the growing demand and better serve the families of Naugatuck. I just wanted to, I gave a little bit of information here, the community needs and why this matters. So according to the CDC, the social drivers that influence a family or a person, 20% is clinical care, 40% is their social economic factors, 30% is health benefit behaviors, and 10% is their physical environment. Economic stressors in Naugatuck, as most of you know, the ALICE population, which is asset limited, income constrained employed families. According to the ALICE data in 2024, 31% of Naugatuck families were ALICE families, while 37% of Naugatuck families are living at or below ALICE and or the federal poverty level. Also, according to the the Naugatuck Valley COG in February of 2025, one of our biggest hurdles, as everybody I'm sure in this room knows, is the housing burden. Of the 12,534 Naugatuck households reported by the Naugatuck Valley COG, 18.9% are considered cost burdened or exceed 30 to 49.9% of their income toward housing. 12.5% of Naugatuck residents are severely house burdened, meaning 50% or more of their income towards housing. And that's a combined of 31.4% of our households are burdened alone just by the cost of living. According to 211 calls for help between March of 2024 and March of 2025, 2,831 Naugatuck residents called 211 for assistance. 26.6% of those calls were for housing and shelter. 26.1% of those calls were for mental health and addiction, and 9.3% of those calls were for food resources. So Connecticut Partnership for Children's direct impact on Naugatuck. Our Family Resource Center, which is currently located at the bottom of Central Avenue Preschool, we serve 487 people monthly with food, clothing, and basic needs. Families are allowed to come into our resource center once a week. We have fresh fruits, vegetables, milk, dairy, eggs, cheese, yogurts, meats, and household items that are shelf stable. Of 126 families right now with children birth to age 3 in Naugatuck are receiving support with diapers and formula through Connecticut Partnership for Children. Families will receive 50 diapers a month plus formula and their basic needs for the first 3 years of life of their children. Or if they sign on up to that third birthday, unless there's a medical necessity that children still need to be diapered into adulthood or wherever that comes. Our investment on early childhood initiatives. So we have increased funding in Naugatuck for our infant, toddler, and preschool spaces. Just 10 years ago, we only had 80 funded slots, meaning families were able to pay what their income entails them to pay according to the state, the Office of Early Childhood. We now have 233 slots as of 2025 in Naugatuck. We bring in $2.5 million annually into Naugatuck, and this allows access for affordable or no-cost early child care for the families in Naugatuck, from infants, toddlers, all the way up through age 5, or to children going into kindergarten. Our mobile food pantries, which we support in Naugatuck, we serve approximately 300 families a month, with great support from our CERT team and also our fire police, over on Rubber Avenue, the second Thursday of every month. And in Beacon Falls, we try to bring in more assistance to try to bring our numbers down in Naugatuck, but we're running approximately 250 families that come to see us in Beacon Falls, and that's every other Wednesday from noon to 1 o'clock. Our referral process is Connecticut Partnership for Children receives referrals from our borough, from local schools, and from organizations, mostly for household assistance, emergency food, child care placement, and wraparound supportive services. So our request for $30,000 to the borough of Naugatuck will be to hire an additional part-time case manager, increase our current case manager's hours, and that will allow us to respond faster to housing and food emergencies, support more families with young children, and help working families reduce the impact on social and economic stressors. In closing, I really do want to thank you all for the time that you allowed me to come here and speak. But I do want to emphasize that this funding is not just a request, not just a funding request, but it's an investment in the health, stability, and future of our Naugatuck families. And I am happy to answer any questions, if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, how do you get those little ends on the emails?
They're very small pen.
So are you saying that you held 2,831 residents, or is that just the calls to 211?
Those are the calls to 211 with families looking for those services. The 211 calls get routed to us at Connecticut Partnership for Children if they have to do with families with children under the age of 5, or actually under the age of 8. And then sometimes people get those phone calls, United Way will get those phone calls, and the early childhood or anything that deals with families with younger children get rerouted to us.
So how many cases or calls, or how many did you have in 2024?
I can get back to you on that number. I did not write that number down.
Okay.
But right now, like I said, we are assisting 487 families a month with our food services and 126 with our diapering services. So we're roughly over 700 families just with those two services right there.
So the 30,000 is going to be used towards personnel?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So we individually case manage each of our families. We find that the wraparound services and being able to help families holistically is better than just giving them a bag of food and telling them, you know, come back when you need it next. So our case managers work with families. We connect them to services so that they can better serve their families and their children. So they'll help with WIC referrals. We've done insurance referrals. We've worked with the housing authorities on getting families in. And especially our preschools. We have a direct contact and link with all of our preschools to enable families to get their children in on that sliding fee scale whenever possible.
Thank you.
So a request comes in, there's a list that's made, and they're assigned to a case manager.
Correct.
You know, approximately the load of each case manager now?
We are,
That's a lot if you've only got 10.
yes, we are well over 100 per case manager right now. And that is, you know, that's the bulk of our our problem, is we want to ensure, we don't want to just be a pass-through service and say, oh, you need a toothbrush and toothpaste, here you go.
Yeah.
Or you need food assistance or diapering assistance, odds are if you have children within that catchment area, there's more than one area that a family needs assistance. So we will sit down with each family every month and have, so, you know, I'm not a direct service provider myself, I am the executive director, but there are many times that I'm called in for direct service also, because we just don't have the manpower at this moment with the increased calls and needs that are coming in.
And I would guess the way prices are going now, you're gonna have more people coming in than coming off. On the
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, we noticed that actually Beacon Falls, since we do every other week, our Beacon Falls clientele for mobile food pantry, increased by about 40 people this month or last week. And when we did the statistics of where they came from, 83% of those were from Naugatuck, of those even new.
Wow.
How many hours do you hope to cover with $30,000? Yes, we're talking about hiring a part-timer and also helping to cover a full-timer, and it's
Right.
$30,000.
So we're not covering a full timer, so our case managers, so we have case managers that are part-time. We do not have benefits. You know, we work on that part-time basis, so we will be hiring a part-time case manager to take on the of some of our clients and also see if we can increase our hours to our current case managers so they can take on a couple more, you know, within a good period of time and not just, hey, have 5 minutes. We don't want to be that, you know, you signed up for a doctor's appointment at 1:00 and by 1:05 you need to be gone. We really want to take that time to, you know, serve the families for what they need, connect with the schools if we need to connect with the schools. And also that means our elementary, middle and high schools also. So we have great partnerships with them to say, you know, this is the family that we're dealing with right now. These are the needs that they have, and we need to be able to work in collaboration with everybody to get these done.
I can attest to the fact that Jill has mentioned everywhere. Because on Facebook, if something comes up, I immediately tag her and she takes care of it, so. And she's done a fabulous job with limited resources, but, you know.
Jill, thank you for all that you do. It's amazing. Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you, Jill, for your time. Have a great evening. What's that? Yeah, that's it.
Always time. And the difference is 30.
No, she's requesting 30,000 total. Not 40,000.
Okay, I thought it was an additional 40.
No, Jill, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Sorry. We just want to clarify, historically you had asked for 10,000, but your full ask is 30, not 30.
We
additional.
asked for 30 last year.
Yes.
Sorry.
That's
We
okay.
asked for 30 last year, and we never made it to the table to present.
Okay.
So, we did receive 10 last year as a in the door. So we are asking for the 30 again.
30 this year.
I mean.
Okay.
We're happy to accept whatever you want to give us.
Naturally. Thank you, Jill. Okay. Up next, we're going to move over to B16. It's on that same page for community service budget, and it's the arts. And who do we have? Spring? Okay, welcome.
Thank you. Treasurer, this is Francis Santana, and that's going to be, I'm one of the co-chairs of the Naugatuck Arts Commission, and Matt is our treasurer. We are staying flat with our ask of 20,000 is what we've been appropriated the last couple of years. I just wanted to highlight some of the things that the art commission is working on this year. So we had that wall mural on Church Street. We had the contest with the Naugatuck Public Schools, and we're hoping that once that area behind 30 Church Street is paved, that we're able to get in there and start putting some of the murals up back there. As you guys know, we are also have been finally approved for the Maple Street wall mural, Maple and Water. But I think there's still a few more things that the Department of Transportation needs, I think from your office, Mayor Hess, and I know that some of the staff at your office are working on that. just to finalize, but I also know that there's construction actively happening down there, so that's not gonna happen right now. Last year, we were able to purchase a new instrument for the high school band. That was a request that, came to us and we were able to fortunately, purchase that. What was it, a trumpet?
Yeah.
A trumpet. And then we have the lineup already for the summer concert series, so that's been finalized. That's happening June 17th through August 19th. And we are also looking to have a recruitment fair. We're still in the planning stages, but we wanted to be able to buy some merch because we were asked to participate in the YMCA Healthy Kids Day and set up a table, but we don't have any merch or any real information to give out, so we're hoping that that we can use some of the dollars for that as well.
All right, so, first of all, your mural project under the bridge on Church Street, they're already approved, the money's set aside. It's not in this budget, so you don't have to request it here. It's in our downtown budget, and that's all set. So I guess the question is, knowing that you have that money already, how does that impact your request from the dollar and cents?
So the other thing that I know that this year in the town's budget, there's no funding to put up a structure, a permanent structure behind the tunnel house. We talked about that last year, that because we were moving from the gazebo on the green, that we were gonna move to the lawn. So last year what we had was like a platform that graciously the town came out.
So we're gonna talk about that separately. That number came in. Go ahead.
We're hoping to be, so we're working with the Naugatuck High School construction team. They're going to help us build a stage, like a semi-permanent stage, and we've also had to purchase lighting for that area, so that's kind of sort of what we're using the funding for right now. And to pay for the concerts.
Okay, so all right, so just the only hard part is which budget we're gonna take it out of. And most of what you're asking for, in addition to the 10,000, is somewhere else. But you still want some money over and above that, which is how much, do you know? In other words, according to this, you got 10 last year, you're asking for 30. You're gonna get whatever you need, you're gonna get
No, 20.
20?
B19.
I think for the past
It's not
two
on
fiscal
the-
years, we got 20, prior to that, we were around.
Oh, yeah, I'm looking at the wrong one.
Well, they're asking for the same 20.
Okay, so you're gonna get the 20 and you're gonna get the money for the mural down here and over here from somewhere else. Are you asking for anything over that?
No,
Okay. So, all right,
thank you.
okay.
And our goal with the recruiting event, we probably did one of those probably about 10 years ago or so. Brought some new people into the fold. We have a good commission currently. But we'd like to.
Usually handles that.
We have a lot of like.
But that's when we do what.
We have a healthy budget. Our problem is people who help
Execute.
put some of these ideas into action. So that's all we do with that.
Okay, so I don't think we're against more action, so find some more people.
That's the goal.
So you'll spend $20,000 on the summer concerts.
A big chunk of the money goes to the concerts. So years ago, we were able to secure bands for $500, $600. Now, like a minimum is $1,000.
Yeah.
And we put on 10 concerts during the summer, so that's a big chunk of our budget.
That was the main reason 2 years ago, we asked for that bump from 13 or so up to 20. Because we were still kind of negotiating with some of these bands that, had them give us a break. But it just got to the point post-COVID where they're like, look, we have equipment, we have people we need to pay. So.
We have some bands that ask for 2,000 for a concert. The Beatles.
All right, any other questions?
This also will help you with the lumber for the kids at the school. That will take care of that stuff.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Are there openings on the art commission?
We have one alternate vacancy, but, we're all staffed up. Yeah, we have all the commissioners.
Yeah,
And we're gonna have a consistent.
I'm not volunteering. I do enough volunteering. Just in case anyone in the audience or someone is interested in supporting in
Yes.
addition to what they're doing.
Yes, for third
Third Tuesday of every month.
at 7 o'clock in here, at 6 o'clock. in here, 6 o'clock.
Any other questions? Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
both.
for your time. Thank you. Do we stay or do we leave? Whatever you want.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, so back in our binders, we're gonna move up to probate court A5. And I'll call upon Judge Rabimbus.
Yes, good evening, everyone. So good evening, Mr. Chairman, Mayor, members of the Finance Board and Burgesses who are in attendance. For those of you who don't know me, I am Judge Rosa Rabimbus. I also have the pleasure of having with me my Chief Clerk, Catherine Ernstke. And we respectfully submit the budget before you, and it is a very conservative one, very minor increases. We put a minor increase for scanning services as well as security measures. There really has not been any change since the last few years of the budget requests. We work very closely with Allison there, so she actually, knows each penny literally that goes in and out of the probate court. And I do want to say that she's wonderful to work with. Anytime we have any questions or we want to cross-reference something, she's very approachable and quick to respond. So I do appreciate that as well. Certainly, as you guys may know, the main probate court is located right in Naugatuck, but we do serve several communities, not only Naugatuck, but Prospect, Beacon Falls, as well as Middlebury. And then each of the other towns do pay a percentage of the overall budget as well. And that's consistent according to law. I also do sit on the Regional Children's Court, and although they do serve our families in Naugatuck, there is no extra expense that the borough provides to the Regional Children's Court in that regard. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions? Okay. I think you're off the hook tonight.
Thank you.
So,
Well, I'll certainly leave you all in good hands with Allison. Like I said, she's got every line item that we expend on behalf of the probate court. So I do want to thank all of you certainly for your service and long hours. Having been in that seat once before, I could certainly appreciate it. So thank you for what you're doing.
thank you, Judge.
All right. Have a nice evening. Take care.
Is anyone in the room or online from the River Brigade?
I'll take it.
Okay, Mayor Hess.
So the River Brigade, is a joint effort with Waterbury, where Waterbury pays for most of it, but we add 2 or 3 students per year, and we'll have 12 students under the direction of Kevin Zach, who is a very zealous river advocate, and they'll spend, I don't know how long, but about 6 weeks or more in the river, pulling out junk, cleaning up the river, and in addition to that, while they're there, they are taught biology and things related to their education. So it's a great program. It's PAL, the Waterbury PAL, and Naugatuck partners, but they probably pay 90% of it. But Naugatuck gets, I don't want to say an equal, but quite a bit more than we pay for of time spent cleaning up the Naugatuck River. So it's very successful, very popular. They get a lot of publicity, and you can see when they're done how much stuff they take out of the river every year.
Is that always the pile that's under the bridge?
Well, that's one of the
One of
problems.
them. All right,
I have a question.
go for it.
In their letter, they mentioned they want 3 additional youths at $2,700 each, but they're only asking for $5,400. That doesn't happen.
Well, maybe, well, look, what did we give them last year?
Don't know.
Gave him 5,040.
But so I think. they're
That's an
asking-
older letter, Rocky, that I had gotten recently, so it might not be.
Okay, it's 2024.
Yes.
Okay, but still, even what it says on it doesn't match
Well,
the calculation.
so it sounds like we had 2 last year and they want 3 this year, so it would be plus 2,700, I'd say is their request.
Okay, for one additional.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That was they did a one-time ask that you had approved. That's what I was interpreting
okay.
as.
Okay, any other questions for River?
Why are we moving it up? So I know what to do.
But we didn't.
Well, the
decide
ask,
that.
Okay.
It's a request,
Yeah.
Okay,
so it's,
but I mean, what's in here though for the requested amount is $5,040.
yeah,
So this letter is from last year in March. So it's a year outdated.
oh, and finally review will decide, but I'd say put in the same as last year. Note they have a request for more when we get to the end.
they sent the same request in.
When we get. to the
Last year,
end,
this
we'll
year.
Decide, but there's gonna be a lot of people falling into that category, so. I think we should know where we are before we decide things
So we-
individually.
So these kids are paid, they're not volunteers.
Yeah, like, they're paid like minimum wage.
No, I don't have, for some reason, I'm sorry, I just thought it was
Yeah.
volunteer.
Yeah,
No,
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 It's
okay.
like hiring summer help.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that. Like I said, I just thought it was voluntary, so.
I'm sure they need money for things other than just the 3 kids.
Yeah.
This isn't a big request.
I'm sure they need gloves and bags and all that stuff. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, any other questions for River?
Okay.
Seeing, hearing that, we'll move forward. We will go down, let's see here. I guess we're gonna skip townwide activity on our agenda. We'll do that last and we'll move into Naugatuck Event Center. That'll be A12 in our vendors.
Basically, what you're looking at that is primarily contractual. Basically, we're still heating our water system for our sprinklers. We still have air conditioning in the building. We were able to reduce part of the contract on the heating system by changing the heating system we had after the flood this year. And Pete, correct me if I'm wrong, but this number could go down too if the building sells.
well, so let me say it another way. So what did we have last year?
We were at 135 last year, 130,500. We're at 80,000.
So this year, we're gonna provide only temporary heat for the first floor. We're not gonna heat the whole building. We're cutting way back on all the utilities. So, arbitrarily, I reduced it by 50. What you're saying and what I'm saying is, when we get to the final review, we might be able to cut it even more. Because the actual costs are gonna go way down. And by the way, we're collecting more rent than ever because the building is full of lumber.
That's because of the fantastic manager you have over there.
So we're making it's a very profitable venture right now, so, it's good.
Are we required to do any work on the elevators?
We're repairing one freight elevator, from,
Right now, it's ready. We're waiting for the state to come down to do the inspection. Work
It's
is all
insurance
been
money.
completed.
It's insurance money.
Gotcha.
So it's running smoothly.
But eventually, this is the building that they talked about at the meeting, that's gonna turn into apartments. Eventually, yeah, okay.
Any other questions or comments on Naugatuck Event Center? Okay, let's move on. Debt service will go into B0, no, never mind, sorry, and also last. Pension will be last. And insurance will also be last. We're gonna keep Allison's all together.
Gonna keep me after school.
We're gonna keep you after school. So reserve fund, I believe, will be next, C3.
That's capital.
Capital, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, capital projects.
There's a revised list we're working off of.
So you should have a separate handout for the revised list that's hot off the press.
Is that over there?
Yes,
Yeah.
Oh.
I'd be honored to bring you one.
I have it. Got me.
You beat me.
That's okay. I'll hobble across.
Did you need one, Rocky?
Yeah.
You're good?
I'll fake it.
Alright.
You want one while I'm still standing?
Oh, might as well.
Oh,
It's what you emailed out like an hour ago.
All right, so first on our list is assessors.
It's just the normal, every year, they get 50,000 towards the reval costs, so we don't have to have a large amount every 5 years.
Elections, we don't have anything at all for this year. And then we'll go into police. Whoa.
It's quite a right. Alright, we go down the list here and I'll start with the largest item. As you guys are aware, we have issues with our HVAC system in the building. It's been aging, so we've had our vendor come and do a walkthrough. Boston working with the street department on this as well. In partnership to try to identify some of the issues with it. Our big concern is that halfway through the fiscal year, we'll have some large mechanical failures, which are unintended, and we have to scramble to make sure that we can fund those repairs. We've identified the first issue that we want to ask to be funded is the HVAC controls system and the valves. So if you recall last year, we funded the control system for the HVAC system. It's a computer module that is basically a computer that serves as a fancy thermostat. So that was completed, I'd say about 6 months ago. Now, the second part of this is we turn that thermostat on. We're seeing that the actual sensors and controls on the physical plant itself are receptive to those commands that we've given by the computer, because the sensors and a lot of the valves are aging, they're not working, and they can't sync with it. So the actual upgrade of the controls and the sensors and the valves will allow us to have the two systems to be working in sync. We went with a non-proprietary system for our proposal, the goal being that we could have not one exclusive vendor service the system. That's something we learned along the way, is we don't want to avoid boxing ourselves into having one particular vendor. So this one believes a Honeywell system, if I'm not mistaken again. So it is serviceable by multiple vendors. So if we're unhappy with our service down the road, or we encounter something else, we have somebody else come in here and service the system. The second part of this project is the certified air balancing, which is basically calibration. Once that work is done, to ensure that all the different parts of the building are receiving the same amount of airflow, be it cooling or heating. That's the two things we identified this year. We do have about a 5-year plan to work down the list here. And we'll hopefully be presenting those down the road, but those are the two most critical issues that we identified, and I want to bring before you tonight as part of our HVAC system. Moving along on the building as well too, our fire alarm panel and our sensors. It's the same fire panel and sensors that have been in the building since its construction, about 1995, 96. They are obsolete, they're no longer serviceable. It's time to replace them and upgrade them. The reason we're asking for the sensors and the fire alarm control station at the same time is if you replace one versus the other, you're going to be a retrograde system to fit the new sensors. You have to shop down. So you really want to do it at the same time. You put the two of them together so you get the newest technology on the fire alarm control box as well as the sensors. The additional things that we have on here, sprinkler system testing and valve replacement. That also ties loosely into the fire system as well as the HVAC. We need to test some of our systems. You need a valve replaced. It's technically a dry system, but because the valve that controls the flooding with the sprinkler system is, again, old, it's obsolete, it's the original one. It needs letting some water go into the system. So when we get the cold weather, some of the pipes have been freezing and bursting, causing structural damage to the building, running water leaks. So we want to replace that valve. A couple other problem areas we've identified. It's not a complete overhaul, but it should at least solve the issue in the short term. In addition, moving down to the next item, we have a newly trained police canine. We have a vendor that's identified by the state police who we use for our police canines. Our projection is to replace canine judge sometime in the next fiscal year. He's coming up on about 7-8 years of service. His handler, Sergeant Pino, is now looking to move on to the next phase of his career. The dog could be retired within that time frame. We'd like to move on and secure a new canine. It's not necessarily a cutoff date, so we'll be looking for something next fiscal year so we can maintain our 2 patrol canines. This one would probably be a Shepherd patrol canine since they're a little more versatile and can do a couple different things. The other 2 items you have are equipment. The IR strobe helmet mountable, those are the enhancement for our officers for nighttime operations, will primarily be used with our regional units. What they do is they'll fix on the back of the helmets, also the canines. So we use our drones, a lot of air support that we use now through fixed wing or else other regional drones. They can identify them as moving on the officers, and when they're doing large scale search operations, not just criminal apprehensions, but also search and rescue operations. It's easier for the Overwatch to identify our officer, direct them in. It's a cost affordable way to really try to direct everyone from one command post. So we're asking for at least about 30 of those, 36 of those, and it definitely is a game changer. The next item for equipment is the 6-hour. They're called night sights, but what they are is we use these red dot sights, which were approved. We did this upgrade about 2 years ago. We purchased the original ones. They were supposed to elevate the back sight on them. They sent us the wrong ones. We had some back and forth with SIG. They accepted the return. The account was credited, but issues with supply chain and turnaround, one fiscal year turned into another. We never actually purchased the correct ones, even though we were credited. So this fiscal year, I would like to replace those. It just helps site fees a little bit higher. It's something important that we should have. We've been able to go a couple of years without them, but it's the purpose of those. If the red dot ever fails, they revert back to their traditional training, the iron sights, and this helps make that more accurate to ensure that they their function safely their nose. So glad to entertain any questions we have on those projects.
So did that credit get allocated elsewhere? That's why I didn't have request this time for the 5,700.
I believe it went back into the firearms account now, so I'm not exactly sure. It was probably about 2 fiscal years ago.
Oh, okay.
But it's difficult with SIG as an international company, and sometimes when we're pushing them, it takes 6 months to get the return labels and process it. So it was one of those, but we're gonna get to it. But we were credited that amount. Right.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Oh, sure.
The HVAC system, based on at some point, the reconfiguration of the police department building, will this have to be redone again, or will this fit in once things start moving around, or?
So in our presentation, which we will be giving shortly, there is funding in there for HVAC. So this particular item will not affect that, but there is a larger piece of mechanical, I believe it's an air handler that is up for replacement. We want to replace that regardless, but it could be done under this project. There's more of our concern with that particular project is ensuring that the building's occupancy level is sustained by the HVAC system. So the building can maintain it, but we need to maybe do some adjustments or calibrations to make sure that it can do that. So I don't think it's going to be any sort of overhaul the entire system. The room that was designated is supposed to be occupied or unoccupied.
It was built with a specific air handler to be occupied, but it's our training room. It's probably occupied 2% of the time. When it is, it's this amount of people, and then when it's not, it's nothing. We've constantly had issues in that room. Now we're taking that room, hopefully, and turning it from a training room to a dispatch center, which is going to be occupied 100% of the time. So that's going to have HVAC concerns, but nothing like you said that will affect this specifically. These are just the controls.
Yeah, and that's a concern we have. We don't want to duplicate work or do something that's right. So these are very, I know, but the price tag on them, but they're minimal continuing maintenance costs.
Thank you.
I have probably more of a finance question. So Allison, I might request for you to answer, unless you know, Chief, that's fine too. When we make large purchases, like 112,000 for an HVAC piece of equipment, if we are putting it in this budget year, are we fully depreciating that in this budget year? Or how is that affecting our future finances, from
So
a depreciation standpoint?
everything in this budget are things that usually can't be may not be able to be purchased in this fiscal year, so they're moved to a reserve fund, so it gives them more time to procure whatever it is, because they're usually long-term purchases. It'll go in there and then the work will be done and whatever time frame it takes them to get it done. And if it goes under, then it ends up going back into the general fund as a revenue in a following year.
Okay,
So I don't know if I answered everything you're
well, that
looking
makes
for.
sense to me, but I was just curious from like. When I look at accounting money
Okay,
versus,
so these are all what are called fixed assets.
yep,
And they'll go into our fixed asset system, and depending upon what the item is, it has a lifespan that gets depreciated over.
that makes.
So no, it does not get fully depreciated in the year that it's
Okay.
expended. That would have been a faster answer.
For any of the non-finance people in the room, if it sounds like gibberish, it is.
Yeah.
But that makes sense to me, so thank you for answering that. You're any other questions?
I do.
Yes, Van.
So, Chief, just a quick question. Last year for $16,000, there was an HVAC control software upgrade.
Correct.
Now we're doing HVAC controls changeover, valve replacement, and certified air balancing. Was that anticipated, or was it because of what was done last year that they realized, oh, no, now we have to do this too?
So that's a really good question. What happens with our HVAC system is we've been tackling it piece by piece. So we had this discussion where we had Jim Stewart come in, Will Hirschman walk around, and aside from a ground up complete rebuild of our HVAC system, which would be well over $1 million, we've been taking bits and pieces of these as we can tackle them. So it's kind of winging a prayer there. We hope that we were only going to need this module, thermostat, computer, however you envision that, was going to be addressing our concerns. But once it became online, we're still having fails, and so the airflow ducts, they won't open all the way. So it's giving the proper commands, but the receiving sensors or the mechanicals on the physical plant now aren't responding to commands to be given from this computer system. So we hoped that would be it, but until we go step by step methodically through this, and that was one of the things that we had just finished, probably about, I think about a month or two ago, was a complete walkthrough essentially of our HVAC system with basically a punch list of all the things that we have concerns for. So, we have something like exhaust fan number 9 that probably will need to be replaced or something. It's about $9,000. It's working now, it's running, but it could go down. It could make it another 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. So that's kind of how we've been trying to tackle this, is bit by bit, trying to basically eat this elephant one piece at a time rather than having to come to you with a fully funded project here. So I feel like this puts us in closer to a better position, but a lot of the things that we have up there are approaching end of life, but do we want to still say we want $105,000 air handler when it's working fine right now? But when it goes, and they can't come and say, hey, it's gonna go offline in this state or anything. So I think it's a conservative approach. It's still cautionary, but we're trying to tackle this the best way we can.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was, okay, we're gonna do this, and then next year we're gonna do that, and then next year we're gonna do that. It's kind of, okay, this is what we think is gonna take care of it, and then we'll see what happens. Okay.
And it may, the list that we have, it may alter around our priorities. There's water balancing is up probably next year, but the air balancing we want to do this year. So it's kind of fluid with how we're trying to do it.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the police capital? Thank you, Chief. Up next on this list is technology.
Good evening, everyone.
If you want to remain seated, you can. Don't feel like you need to.
Sometimes it does help to stay on.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, don't tell my
We won't
therapist that. When I
take
tell
it
him I want to
offensive.
sit, he's like, no, go hop on the weights over there. Do it with one leg.
There you go.
So I have to get back to hiking because I got to be able to beat the tree up the mountain.
Oh yeah.
On there, yeah. Because he told me, dancing and vectors was not the cool guy way to go. In retrospect, doesn't really matter, still have sutures in my ankle, so it doesn't really make much difference. Anyway, so first item up, we've got our annual replacement for 102. I'm holding the line on that, even with the tariffs that are coming, that are on there. Everything that I'm dealing with is subject to tariffs because 99 or 100% of it comes from overseas. We don't make any of this stuff here.
53% on technology equipment so far.
Thanks, Rock. Need that. All right, so I only added 30% in here, so I'm still short. But we'll do the best that we can, trying to hold that one at 102. We usually are on a 5-year life cycle, so this just kind of keeps moving along the way, trying to keep the technology the best that we can. If we ever run into a year that we can't do something, or I need to use the money for something else that comes up in an emergency, at least I know that what we have is still adequate for what the market and the world is using and is still secure, meets our cybersecurity policies, and is patchable. That's item number 1. Next item on here is a new item that we've got. We have a SAN, which is a storage area network. This goes in up to the department. This basically it holds all the data. I have one very similar to that here in the town hall. And theirs is end of life as of this coming year. And we're looking for 214,500 to be able to replace that. That is with the building for the tariffs, even though it may be a little bit on the light side. I can't guarantee all of it's going to go in. I have my own views on where the tariffs are going to go, but we tried to be as accurate as we could. This is something that sits in-house, stores all the data from all the officers when it comes to whether it's a chief, deputy chief, all the way down to patrolmen with the reports. The next item that we have on there, we're actually looking, for 42.9, there's actually 2 servers. And they're smaller, but what they are is they're what they call a NAS unit or a network attached storage. It just sits there and just sucks in data. It doesn't do any processing, doesn't do anything else. And we looked at possibly putting this in a cloud because we thought maybe we could save the money. The cloud was 6 figures. So it was not a hard decision to turn around and ask for 42.9 to be able to keep it in-house. Because when they want 299,000 or 350,000 to be able to store this stuff in the cloud, and this would be every year, just seemed absurd with the costs of flash storage and things like that that are sitting out in the cloud. We'll bring it in-house, we'll use our own stuff, save the money, and be able to repair it if we need to. So there's the 42.9 is actually 2 units, a primary and a redundant. Because we're in IT, we want 3 or 4 of everything, but 2 is usually really. Next item we have are the town hall firewalls that I replaced back at the beginning of COVID through some FEMA grants and things like that Allison helped me get. Be able to grab those. These things are now 5 years old. We stay with our pen testing and everything else. They were recommended by Witnessy, who is the company that we use for our penetration testing. Just happens to be the same company that James's Federal Credit Union also uses on a recommendation. They did a tremendous job. And they recommended that we upgrade these to the next generation, just to kind of stay in the forefront because the world is a really unique place when it comes to cybersecurity. The phone system upgrade for 158,000 is just the core guts of what makes the phones work. Basically, when you call in, where it dials around, we've got a couple of servers that we run on that. We have a set that sits at the town hall that runs the town hall, fire department, and public works, as well as every other department in the building. We have a secondary set that sits over at PD. We call it a secondary silo or a subscriber unit. So if there's ever a break, the systems actually talk to each other and replicate. But if we had an issue in between where the replication broke, 911 still works. And that was the key that I made sure when we designed the system back in 2010 is I'd rather have no phones and have to explain it to Pete than have Colin calling me at 2 a.m. in the morning going, we have no phones and the world's blown up. So I felt it was better to have Pete in that line and have to deal with it here because we can always radio over to fire from the dispatch center to make sure things were going out. It was a conscious effort to be able to do that, but this is like a dual setup. And 158 grand is really just the servers that actually route all the information around. I'm working on an infrastructure replacement that was funded in prior years right now. That'll help balance everything. The last item that I got on here is our MDT replacement, which is in phase 3 of this year, and then it starts again the following year for $47,432. These are the laptops that sit in the cruisers that every patrolman uses. These things get beat every day. That's on there. They barely last 3 years, but we're doing a 3-year rotation on these versus 5 years on any other hardware that we typically have. It's just, it's out there, it's in the field every day. This stuff's just being brutalized, and I don't care what kind of Panasonic.
Find softer words.
I'm sorry, they're rugged. Okay, our officers are doing their job, but they're not going to be soft. Is there a better word for it? Okay, when they type with hammers. Okay, so it's what it is. We know that, and these things are the ones that the military uses, and we still burn them over 3 years. So this is an annual thing that we have. We rotate them every 3 years. We only buy about 16 of them at a time. I'm sorry, 6 of them at a time, excuse me. And we just rotate whatever one's the next one to go out of the cars, goes in, we get put a new one in there. Everything's the same, no learning curve. And that's the request for technology this year. Questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Did you say that you added 30% on top of for the tariffs?
Already, yes. The number that I have is anticipating the tariff that's going to be in there. If the tariff doesn't go in or it gets rolled back, we will spend less. But right now, the initial quote that I had was for 165. I added 30%. Rocky's telling me he's here at 53. I'm not adjusting. I'm going to stay with the number that I've got right now and run with it.
But if you're not gonna order this until next year, so it's months away, why would you?
Well, the tariff isn't gonna go away. If I was to buy it today, it's literally, I could buy it tomorrow for 165 grand. Next week, when the tariff hits, it will be 30% more. So I'm adding that on there.
You got your life on that?
Do I bet my life on that? No.
Okay.
But I'll put a good chunk of money on it. But not like,
I put a good chunk of money, because something different will happen.
Well, Jim, do you want to hit on some of the discussions we were having on this, which is basically we could secure the contracts now potentially and not execute the order to July 1, but that would be contingent obviously on the funding not being there yet. So that's maybe something offline we could discuss if that's
That's a lot of money on a $500,000 capital request.
The experts I follow say right now, buy an iPad, an iPhone, a laptop. Don't wait, get it right now.
Right, but obviously, we're not gonna be able to do that.
Right.
Okay, so what I'm saying is you have a $576,000 request.
Correct.
Is that 30% included in that $576,000 request, or are you requesting 576,000 plus 30%?
No, the number that I gave you at 214 for the first one and 42.9 for the second has 30% built in already. So that's the number. Now, if it goes higher than that, well, I'll scale it back to be able to buy it within the means that we have. I spent a considerable amount of time on the phone Friday. This all came up about 11:30 a.m. Friday morning. And by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Hal and I had talked too many times to be able to actually come up with a game plan for it. And I said, well, if the vendor that we're looking at right now wants 30%, they wanted me to guarantee I could buy it tomorrow. And I said, that's not how this works. They're like, but if you can give me the order, don't take the delivery until July. I said, it's going to take 2.5 months to build it anyway. So at this point, we agreed we're going to put 30% in it. If it costs more than that, we'll scale it back to stay within the money. If by chance the tariffs are a negotiating tactic where they end up rolling it back, then I'm going to buy it for whatever it costs. I'm not going to spend more than what I need to be. And I'll give back the balance of the money to be, to the budget.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's gonna happen. That's all you gotta say.
Okay. I'll wait to see.
It's gonna happen.
Go ahead.
So
So
that-
everything else there?
No, I mean, it's one of those things of, obviously this is a finalized budget and that is a big number to ask to secure or lock in that purchase now. I think the vendors are looking to make sure they secure the contracts. And it is sometimes been a process where we do describe it and say, do we want to agree to a contract early to lock in pricing, but that's difficult with a large item like this prior to the acceptance of the final budget. So that's something I think Jim and I were saying we wanted to defer to the group as a whole too, and make you fully aware of that you could look at that 30% savings, but the commitment would have to happen now with that particular vendor. So it's really outside of our purview whether or not that could be authorized now or not.
So if you have a contract signed now, the tariff is at the border. So it doesn't matter when it's coming in, that's when the tariff is going to be under.
Well, that was part of my
vendor
question
cannot
that I asked.
Guarantee you that when the tariff is an import tax.
It-
So
it
as soon as
could
when
be.
it comes in,
But there generally is some lead time or parts that they're gonna have here, so just whether we're getting in line ahead of it, so how much is already stateside or not, is I think what they were trying to communicate to us. I mean, they didn't have to direct.
also they might have some of it already in the.
Yeah, there is a limited usually amount here, so it's just, they're like, hey, by the time we get to that point in the line of requesting, it's gonna need to import those parts, so it's, the issue with a lot of the supply chains right now is they're not storing as much stateside and the on-demand ordering has been moved away, and you're having to go back further up the supply chain to get items like this, so. We have a contract, we hold them to that price, but outside of that, we're gonna be at the whim of what their prices are when we make that order after July 1.
Just so that everybody understands, many items in IT that I deal with are custom orders. It's not like I can buy, like we have this owl that's sitting here right in the middle of the room. That's there, that is the owl, that's all you're gonna get if you ask for an owl. If I wanna build a storage area network, they're gonna turn around and I choose a chassis. And the chassis is X dollars. And then what do you wanna populate with drives? So what type of drives do you wanna put in there? And now you start picking the drives, and now you have varieties of costs. You wanna add processors, yeah, how many? How much RAM? And then how many network cards that you're on there? And many of our servers have 12 to 18 network cards in these things so that they can handle hundreds of requests at the same time. You'll do it. And you start putting these things together, and these servers cost anywhere between 25,000 to 500,000, depending on where you are in the scope of what's happening. So will there be some items stateside? Yes, but everything has a chip in it. So because of that, now are we sustaining our own chips here in the United States? No. Did they want to try to do that at the end of COVID? Yes, but how long does it take to be able to start building chips? I don't know. I'm not that guy. But I did go out and buy a new car because I got scared of that. My wife convinced me to be able to do it, so I picked mine up on times. So it was before all this stuff went crazy. Because I'm not, but that's kind of where we're at. So I tried to build in a little bit of a buffer that's there and hope that we don't need it. And if we don't, I will absolutely give it back.
Jim, I agree with you 100%. I went through it yesterday on a set of hearing aids. I'm having one repaired. First, they had to verify they had the parts. Like I said, they're almost custom. But the other thing said you ought to start considering, because they're 5 years old, you ought to replace them. They're $6,900 today. If you wait and the tariff hits, we're adding 35%.
There you go.
All right. I learned them yesterday.
I hate to say it, but this is the world we're sitting in, so these are the real world requests.
All right, any other questions? All right.
Thank you all. Have a terrific night.
Up next is fire.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, tariffs, we just did a fire hose order, $12,000 with the fire hose. Our vendor has told us that he is going to absorb the $1,800 tariff. We didn't have to do that, but it's $12,000 order, but I don't expect that to be a very common occurrence. I'm very generous with that. Couple things before we start, a very light capital project request this year. The finance board, both when I was on it and before I was on it, has been, very supportive of the fire service over the years. We've improved equipment, training, apparatus, the tools. We've actually increased our level of service to the town. So the membership of the fire department, thanks you, as well as myself. I broke my request down into 3 subjects. One is items that we requested last year that were not funded. First item was the repaving of the driveway and parking lot at east side. It's in horrible condition. Jeremy's been up there fixing it a few times, sinking, it's cracked. It's well beyond the kind of need to be fixed. It does cause problems if one of our vehicles is leaving, that it actually bounces down and it hits a big pothole. And so, and I think we looked at it last year, and hopefully he's gonna be right out. And move that, it's gonna break in the beginning. Price we had last year was $66,000. The other item we requested last year that we did pull out of our request was a hose dryer. Not critical at this point. At some point, we're going to replace it. We don't fund it this year, it won't be good for another year, but that is coming. It's a $13,000 item. That extends the life of our service of our fire hose considerably. The next item are 2 reoccurring requests. We put money aside every year for 2 air packs. At the 5th year, we buy 10 air packs. That is our frontline equipment, frontline air packs. And that keeps us in line with the ever-changing technology and requirements. We have a very good air pack replacement program that we're maintaining everything in-house, which is a considerable savings. We're actually the only fire department in the state of Connecticut that does full air pack maintenance. Even the bigger cities do not do it, but we've been doing it for years. Saved us a tremendous amount of money. And constant rotation of the older equipment ends. We get out of service before its life cycle ends. Also the automatic defibrillators. One of our firefighters have been maintaining them. There's 18 that are in the borough and all town buildings. 2 of them are no longer supported by the manufacturer. We want to get to a cycle where every year we replace 2. And you make that an ongoing project. And that's at 6,300. New items. We have a plumbing issue in the firehouse, so we're doing an emergency repair on 2 showers right now.
Is that in this year? That's in the current budget?
That's in current, but there's another one I want to do next year before. We're fixing the 2 showers in the main locker room now. Water was actually pouring down for the first floor. We open up, there's mold, mildew, rotted the subfloor. We're still working at the extent of damage on that. There's a 3rd shower in the captain's bunk room that we want to get repaired before we get to that point. So he's putting in for $12,000 to retile it, reline it. There's no leaks there yet. We want to prevent it, leaks from happening. A diesel exhaust system. If you come over to the fire station, you notice there's large hoses that connect to the fire truck. And those hoses go to a blower. When the truck is turned on, it sucks the diesel exhaust out of the building. That system was put in when Joan Taft was mayor 25 years ago. So the newer company came in, the system has worked flawlessly. And for 25-year-old technology, it works great. I remember being in the fire station, we get the diesel smoke upstairs. You get sit on your plates, it was bad. The system works, however, the electronics in it are no longer supported. 25-year-old electronics. Transmitters in the trucks, receivers in the station. The physical part, the physical parts of it, the tracks and the hoses are fine. So, and we had the company look at them, they're in great shape, there's no issue with that. But replacing the electronics, the controllers, the transmitters that are in all the vehicles, and that was at $55,800. Again, it's not failed yet, but if it does fail, it's a positive environmental issue in the station. So that's it for my request for this year for capital. The one item that I'll probably be addressing is going forward is it's time to order another fire truck. When we was on the fire commission, we needed a long-term apparatus replacement plan, and we've been following it pretty closely. I don't know, last year we ordered a rescue truck. We will not see that for 3.5, 4 years. If we commit to ordering a pumper now, we will not see it till fiscal year 29-30. Still a 4-year build on these. So I'd like to present to the joint boards at some point to give authorization to order the pumper in August, when we can see it in 4 years.
Is that in our previous plan that we approved?
Yes. And that's right, we're looking at about $1.1 million for that.
Let's revisit that separately.
Yeah, let's be separate. I just wanted to let you know that would be coming. It's not part of this capital project. We need funded only 10 years finance for those. And that is all. But I total request everything 178 to
Ambulance, him.
He's doing the ambulance.
He's doing the ambulance.
Yeah.
Da, 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 da. He was buying, a couple of parts for the ambulance, replacement equipment in the ambulance.
Where's that one?
It's the last item in there.
On page 11?
Yes.
Oh, that's okay. So if you flip to the last, very last page of this packet, the ambulance replacement, 68,000.
Kyle presented it with his budget and he did discuss the equipment he wanted to replace in this budget.
Power load stretchers and the.
Yes.
Power load equipment.
Yes,
If you're not familiar with the power load stretchers, that, in the old days, and I think that was then through the old days, of Rocky especially.
A lot of fat people we picked up.
Yeah, and you would actually physically pick the person up and slide them in a stretcher, and a lot of EMTs have like a back injuries. These power load stretchers, it's the 98-pound EMT can put the person on, push the button, lift it, float them in. It saves tremendously on back injuries and much more efficient to use. All the ambulance services are doing that now. It's highly recommended, considering the cost of one back injury. Definitely the way to go. That would be the other request for the, we have a new ambulance coming in, so all ambulances will have these power load devices and stretchers.
It's not like it used to was where these burly guys worked on the ambulance. You know, now there's a lot of young ladies and skinny guys.
Yep.
And it's very difficult.
thanks, James.
No problem. All right, any other questions for fire?
Any questions about fire?
All right, up next is DPW. Share my screen. Sure. Are you on the Zoom? Allison?
Jim?
And of course, the tech guy leaves.
No, he's online.
Oh.
Yeah.
Are you on?
Lee, if you can promote Jim Stewart. Yeah, you just did. Okay, excellent.
Take a 1 minute break.
Exactly what I'm doing. Taking a minute.
Appreciate it.
You can share your screen and then we're good.
It's amazing how that. You build me up and then all of a sudden goes up. So with the.
If you guys want the handout, it's right there.
Oh, yeah.
Just want to pass that out. Ah, okay.
Thanks for the kind of down.
Dorothy, did you email me the formula?
I was going to today and then I got busy with work. I have a note to send it to you.
I'll text you as a reminder. Thank you.
Small, just.
Well, you don't need the first page. It's just, the way it's laid out is this is our budget request. I mean, it could be very close to order to what you got. But the far left column tells you what pages in the document are the backup for what we talk about.
Okay.
Okay, so
Yes.
Holy mackerel.
Yeah.
You know, we're all old, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does that to us all the time.
okay, well, you don't have to read the first page.
Okay.
It should be the same. It should be the same.
Small print with numbers.
See.
It's the same.
Oh, okay.
Wasting time.
Ready?
Are we ready? Okay, so our first item is paving. As you guys know, we've been doing a lot of paving in town. We do have, let me get myself to my right spot. first slide, and I'll get this in detail. First slide shows you the condition of the RSR, the road surface rating of the roads in town since we've started accelerating our paving from $250,000 a year, which was the historic number for the last 30 years before, 10 years ago. And that was 1 mile a road a year out of 120 miles, so that was a 120-year plan. We accelerated to a point, and you'll see from the attached 5-year plan we have, which will allow us to pave all the roads in the next 5 years of the plan. So in a total of 8 plus 5, 13 years will have covered the entire town. So that plan is financing of the plan is on page 3, which would require the town to come up with $1.3 million this year. As I said, following that is the roads will be proposing to pave.
So just to be clear, the town has other money applied for paving. That doesn't include any of our special projects, what we get from the utility companies and other sources. So we probably spend $4 million a year.
Oh, with all the projects
Of
going
which 1.3 comes out of this budget.
Here we get town road aid, we have lots of, and we get fees from utilities as well.
And all of it goes to paving because the street department, Mike Marino and his crew, they do all the catch basins, all the drainage. The town used to hire private contractors for that. So that's all done in-house. We got a lot of money from other sources. And with 1.3 million, we pave about $4 or $5 million worth of roads every year.
Okay, next item is the townwide sidewalk replacement program. Last year, we got around $280,000 and we paved Central Avenue, the previous year Cedar Street and Water Street last year, along with Church Street, all with town forces. We got the sidewalks and repaved all those roads. The next part of the plan, which you'll see on page 10, is to take care of Park Place, so it aligns with the downtown improvements, and then Oak Street. So Park Place, we all know that that's downtown from Meadow to Church in this area, and then Oak Street we'll be doing from the bridge on up the street to the end. So all those sidewalks are in parallel conditions. They're downtown, and that's our next phase. And as I said, we've estimated that at the $380,000. Okay. Right.
We have 380 in our.
Yep. 380. Yep.
Yeah. But you're asking for 284 for these streets? What's the other 100 going to?
No, it's 380. 284 was last year's.
Oh, I see. All right, thank you.
The next project is Hillside Avenue. This is a LOTSIP project in which the state pays 100% of the construction costs. We would have to pay 100% of the design costs. The state would pay 100% of the construction and inspection costs afterwards. There is a little extra there if we decide to do the brick, which I expect will do some brick, but that still be determined. We would have to pay for the brick. But at this point, we'd be looking for $150,000 to start the design of the project. We do have the current LOTSIP project, which is Rubber Avenue, which is ongoing now. We expect that'll be done in the fall. So it would be nice to have another project to start next fiscal year. So we don't give up a significant project.
So that 150 starts the design. That's not the full design.
I'm hoping that that can be the full design. That's what we're hoping.
Okay. And then that 1.7 in the next fiscal year million, is that covering the actual?
Well, that would be if we went all in for brick And we had to pay for the brick and the real streetscape amenities. So the Valley Cog, they certainly, they approved the project, they certainly would go with the granite curbing, probably could get some trees, but they thought that putting brick on the entire road.
They won't pay for the brick, so we'll have to make a decision.
We'll discuss that, but.
Yeah, that's
the
a
brick-
separate
I mean, the brick is a failure on the bridge, and we knew it.
No,
something else.
it's different. We have to fix the storm drainage on Hillside Avenue,
Mhm.
and then it will be fine. But whether we do brick is a separate question.
Okay. Move on.
Okay, next, is repaving for, page 12, repaving for the Tuttle, parking lot. And we're gonna discuss this further, but we're requesting a paving box. For quite some time, we had a contractor, Coachella was giving us an incredible deal on asphalt. Less than we could actually potentially buy it for. Certainly less than we could truck it and buy it and put it down for. Recently, our prices have gone up, still a great deal, not as great a deal anymore. And so we are gonna request later that we get a paving box, so the town can actually do the work and pay for the paving. We have a lot of parking lots, that are coming up for paving. We're requesting money for 2 of those now, and these numbers are based on the town actually buying the asphalt and doing the work. One is the Tuttle Building, parking lot, and the next is 30 Church Street, the new municipal lot, which we have planned, to, remove and repave the lot, restripe it, put in islands. We're gonna repurpose the downtown streetlights, street poles that are being removed. We have a concept sketch right here that would go in the alleyway between the buildings and tables and chairs and such. And most of that number, that 100,000, is the actual asphalt for the work. Okay. Next project is the spray park. We do have some money for the spray park, and we purchased the parts. And the entire project, we're estimating is $250,000. We have 150. Currently, we need another $100,000 to take care of fencing, landscaping, playground equipment, and such. That detailed information's on 13. And just so you know, Sandra did order all the parts and
Prior to the tariff.
prior to the tariff, and we got them under the wire, so
Exactly.
there you go, Sandra, good job. Okay. Next project would be improvements to Bomber Pond. Sandra, I'll let you talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Page 14.
Bombers Pond is, the whole playground area. It currently has a tennis court, a basketball court, and then just an entry court that has nothing in there. A lot of kids go there and pick around like the little, hockey. Not
Jack hockey?
that hockey. They bring in their own little nets, and then we have the playscape, which is in complete disrepair. There's ancient pieces of equipment. It's in really bad shape. All of the fencing with the heaving of the ground, all the tubes, the concrete piers are popping up. It's just in really bad shape. So this 450,000 would cover soup to nuts, the entire project. That would be ripping out every single thing in there, starting from scratch. We're trying to make some changes of reconfiguring things. But the plan would be to put in a whole new playscape, swing set, playground equipment, all new fencing, all new asphalt, coating it, just like the pickleball courts and basketball courts down at Linden that we recently did. And that would be 2 pickleball courts, a tennis court, and a basketball court. And that would be for the whole 450,000.
Once this pickleball craze is over, Can those be converted to something else?
I don't think it's gonna be, it's still very popular,
Oh.
very popular. But yes, it's just recode, it's the same, it's a regulation size, so you could always throw a tennis court in there if you wanted to, or a basketball court.
I don't do anything where you have to run. Too much gravity.
How imperative is it that this improvement happens this fiscal year?
It's imperative because it's unsafe right now. Either we strip it down and leave it bare for a whole year and hope to get funding for next year, because at this point, it's pretty unsafe. Fencing, the playground equipment is popping up, we have to keep trying to cover it with playground fibers, so it's an expensive project. We have to get taken down at some point this year, and then we have to hold off to reinstall it and get it down.
Please.
Yes.
That. Good question, but at the end of the day, number one, we're probably gonna have to set up one or two more meetings. Because after we go through everything and we put all the numbers together, the town side is way under, we're gonna be under 1%. The capital budget side is up about $1 million compared to last year. So we're gonna have to look at that. And the Board of Education is up in the sky. So when we get to the end, knowing that we want to continue including the town, help the Board of Ed as much as we can, and maintain our cumulative decrease based on our reval, we're gonna have to make some decisions. So the more information we gather tonight, the better. I think we're gonna have to add one or two meetings, because we're gonna be going, I'm sure, back and forth with the Board of Ed. There's gonna be a lot of moving parts. And at the end of the day, some choices are gonna have to be made. And I guess that's what we call democracy. So it might take one or two more meetings this year, but we'll get through it.
Whatever happened to the exercise equipment that was gonna go on?
It's there.
Is there?
It's been there for a couple of years. I just want to acknowledge that. If you look at on the park section, on the park section, I have $100,000 for the splash pad, which was a project that was initiated before I took over as a superintendent. And for this Farmers Pond improvement project, I'm attempting to obviously reduce numbers this year. I'm foregoing ordering any additional equipment or anything else. It's my main focus in the parks. Our playgrounds were in pretty rough shape. And I'm proud of what we've done down at Linden. I'm still finishing up that playscape and making improvements. So to do that for the other side of town would be huge. Because there's nothing really going on that side for the Hill Street area.
Do you have any tubes or anything you pick out that we can use for the dog park? They're gratefully accepted.
Cindy, for this park in particular, because it's unsafe, what would it cost just to like level it out so that way there's no unsafe areas?
That would probably be something Jeremy, because he's been really good, even with the splash pad.
The cost of labor.
Yeah, it would be the cost of labor, because even the splash pad was budgeted back a few years ago. And I was getting quotes in the 400,000. So if it wasn't for Jeremy's, pitching in and saying, we're gonna clear the whole area, we're gonna grade it out. They took on a lot of responsibility on that project to reduce the numbers. And with this number, that's actually Jeremy removing everything and having to, with the manpower from the street side, to remove all the equipment. We will most certainly make every effort to make it safe, and address those issues one by one. But that would be it.
Thank you. Any other questions on Farmers Pond before we move on? Okay, let's continue.
Okay, so the next item would be replacing the town's back truck. Obviously, we use this to clean catch basins, which is required by our MS4 permit, and we clean all the clean or inspect every catch basin in town. Jeremy can tell you more about the old truck.
Sure. The old truck is 25 years old now. We've had this showing, because this was coming up in this budget the last couple of years. Matt has done a lot of repairs to it. If you have any questions on repairs, getting it to getting it going. The one advancement in the back trucks they've made, obviously we need to clean our over 2,000 catch basins every year. clean our pipes, but they can really do, excavation now too. So the versatility we get in it is so much greater, just cleaning the catch basins, we can suck around gas mains, electrical lines and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, 45 years old, technology and it's that one's done. Not gonna touch on some stuff, we've gone through it. We get it rolling this afternoon.
Yeah, it's tired. It rarely makes the day. Somebody's coming back and saying, it's not sucking. The engine won't come on, it's leaking, there's a hole over here, this is rotted, this is broken, it's bad.
So it goes along the lines of the things that we've been trying to replace over the last 10 years that weren't where they were supposed to be. We knew the state was coming in this year, and it's a tough one to swallow, but it's a necessity for public works. And then, like I said, plus you get to versatility of the installation.
It's huge when you don't have to put a bucket by a gas main.
It helps save lives.
So the 84,500 is a 10-year lease for the vehicle. We expect it to last at least that long. And what we think is the NIP money that we have. By the time we get this in lease payment, we'd have the money to potentially pay that first lease payment if that was what you wanted to do.
So just for the newer members on the committee, when we make large purchases like fire trucks or big vehicles like this, when they're $630,000. That is paid up front, and then we make annual lease payments for a particular term, whether it's 5 years or 10 years, based on that itself. So just keep in mind when we're looking at what we're spending this year, while we're buying the truck, or excuse me, while we're leasing the truck for $628,712, our first payment of that lease is only $84,500, and then it continues on. So I just want to clarify that for if you're looking at why the invoice is almost $630,000, but we're budgeting 84. We're just budgeting for the lease payment in itself. We're not buying it with cash, we're buying it through lease.
Right.
So I just wanted to clarify that for any of the new members if they're, hopefully if it was sticking out for you. Yeah.
Next is another 10-year lease, replacing an F-550 plow truck.
Yeah, this builds on our rebuilding department still. We're still not fully rolled into a cycle of moving them all out. We're close into a regular rotation, but this is still one of the older ones we're replacing. I think we show this kind of what we've been replacing them with. This is one of our current plow trucks, and that's the one we'll be replacing. So we'll be just like that one, except without the toolboxes, which is actually a little cheaper. Yeah, about $10,000. $10,000 without the toolboxes. It's amazing. Just keeping that current, trying to get it to that actually rotation where we want it to be. This, like I said, it's still one of the older ones.
Okay. And we talked about this, the paving box. Jeremy, is Jeremy doing a paving project or painting?
That's not me. That is our crew paving up at Union City Little League last week on a demo of the exact same model we have in here. Our guys are awesome, you know, to grab a piece of equipment like that, take it on to do that job. This Mike was there. So it goes back to what Jim was saying with the 2 parking lots. Our thought was those costs would be double if we were to pay the contractor to do it. And to get a piece of equipment like this and supplement that, it could also out shim roads, get a longer lifetime out of them, shim our milled roads, do our trenches.
Your section of the road sometimes that fall apart.
Well, that's what we're talking about.
Part of a
When I
larger
say
road.
shimming a road, when I say shimming a road, I should explain it more. We're a road that we want to get a few more years out of it without putting the contractor on it. A thin layer up it and roll it just to get it to where we want it to be for our paving.
If we can't get a contractor to just show up and put a small amount of asphalt. Plus, that price skyrockets to put down a couple trucks and mobilize, bring the paver down, to put down 40 tons of asphalt on a road.
And it kind of goes back to Jim's price, like you said, we got our pricing for our roads, but our pricing for our parking lots is smaller amounts, so our double, if not more. But we would also like the job our guys do too, so. We didn't also get it done and be more versatile.
By having this type of equipment, since
Yeah.
we don't have it now, does that affect like workman's comp insurance or any other insurance factors? Because
I don't
it's something
think it-
different?
I don't think it would any more than all the other equipment.
Okay, that's fine.
And it's gonna keep you from, it's gonna keep you guys around to shovel.
We don't have room, we don't have room for what we have now.
Yeah. But I mean, as far as the workers' comp, if it does anything, it's gonna lower it. These guys are shoveling.
Yeah, we do it all by hand now.
Yeah.
This is true too. They're doing a lot of their batches, 20, 40 ton batches a day to get ready for paving or micro paving in a few weeks. How many batches do we have to do? So we'd like to get the demo out again and lay down 40, 60 tons of asphalt with that, as opposed to 2 days of labor. That's where your workman's comp may cut into. when you're
Yeah, no, and
shoveling
I like what you're
asphalt.
telling me. It sounds good. I think bringing it in-house is probably the best idea.
For just doing a couple projects and then having it for the next 10 years plus is a no-brainer.
Now, is there kind of like how we purchased the fuel, I don't know, consortium of sorts of which we need, like, whatever the raw materials that go into this machine to make the pavement? that we can
Well,
purchase by?
We get it through the state,
Yeah.
VIP pricing. So we get what every other town who buys it in this area gets.
Okay.
So.
Which we already purchased it. Buy a lot of asphalt.
Sure.
Besides not effective.
What else you got?
Okay. Next is replacing an old Target road saw. Mike?
Sorry, Mike. We tried to find the age of the old one, we couldn't find it. But,
So,
older than Mike. It's older than us.
Yeah.
It's older than us.
So this is our larger road saw. If you guys have ever seen a lot of companies come out, they'll have like a box truck and like a sort of like a ride-on version where they're doing large trenches. That's when we'll take that out. The one on the left that we currently have, a lot of the parts are obsolete. You can't even find matchmaking things to try to fix it. I know the belts are slipping on it, and it also doesn't cut as deep. That one has an 18-inch blade on it, so with the arbor in the center of the blade, you're only getting about a 6-inch cut, which on some of our older roads have been laid over a lot. You can't actually get all the way through the asphalt. You're coming back and kind of cutting it with our smaller saw a second time. I think we're going with a 24-inch blade on the new saw, so that'll give us, I think that puts us at about 10-inch depth. So it'll cut through basically the things right down here. I think rubber have about 8 inches in some spots, so that should cover about everything. And it's gonna, if anything does go wrong on it, we can actually get the parts from it. The other one we've been limping around. It hasn't been able to use the self-propulsion because the belt's been slipping, and we haven't been able to get the parts to repair it. It's time to retire the old.
That's
girl.
main parts for it. So it's. Yeah.
What do you use? I'm sorry. I don't-
No, it's fine.
This is not my thing. This is like French to me. What is that used for? Obviously it says a road saw and you're cutting the
So
tree.
if we're
What do you do that
So
for?
if we're gonna put pipe in the ground, we have to cut a trench like all the trenches you see, or we'll cut a 6-foot trench, 200 feet up the road. We have smaller saws for, 10-foot trenches, but when you're doing a long trench cut, you're using
Yes.
the bigger saw for that.
That makes complete
Cutting
sense.
that
Thanks.
asphalt, the excavator can come in and start digging.
Yeah, so you don't rip the road up
Yeah.
more
I'm
than
just-
you have to.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That was a dumb question.
Next item is a replacement of. Jeremy, what is it, storage container for you?
Yes, we're gonna put the paving box in the stores. We got some storage containers last year to, take on some of our excess of smaller equipment from inside the street department building and put in them. We kept 2 of our older ones. They're just leaking so much. We have a lot of our road signs in them, a lot of our, concrete equipment in them. We just want to get rid of those, so we can store all that small equipment in and bring 2 smaller for 20 yards. Two 20-yarders in to, get rid of those 2, so we're not leaking water onto a lot of.
Just pave the town?
I think we might have tried.
It has cards on it.
It has cards on, it has some rubber roofing, but you know, you hate to see those dollars get driven up.
Is there value in renting those things versus us buying them? I don't know what they cost monthly, but
We shop it around, there's a few places around, there's one in New Haven, one in Stanford, and Eagle Leasing, which does a lot of them, but get a pretty good deal on them, you know, like $2,500 a piece. Stanford, that was a chance. He comes, you just have to take them off for him. I think the leasing costs a lot.
Okay, that's fine.
For what we're gonna keep it for a long, long. If it was like for a year, then it might be what you wanna do.
Okay, next is a body for the old police animal control. truck. Sam?
That's, that truck that's in the pictures, our truck 75. Matt went to put a GPS in it and found out that the only thing loaded up the fuel tank was the nozzle. And that's our, like, the pickup truck we usually use to collect trash at all the parks. Once he red tagged it, it was no longer safe for road or roadworthy, so he Matt made the decision to red tag it. That's when he informed me that the police department had, their older, animal control vehicle at a garage getting fixed from some minor accident that happened over the winter, so I reached out to, Chief McAllister and Chief North. And they were willing to, relinquish it to me, so what's in the budget right now is to take the body off of the truck. That's currently there, because it's all these little cages, which don't serve any much purpose. We were gonna start, we're gonna use them to clean up the parts, and put a new body on it, as opposed to having to buy a whole new truck. Because it's important that I have some type of a pickup style truck, because we have to throw the cans up onto the truck, and on the dump bodies, it's evaporated. So that one is just to put the body on the existing truck.
Next is the $30,000 annual playground improvement line item. To keep upgrading the parks, repairing damaged equipment. Sandra?
This is a line item that's been in the budget every year. This covers replacement for all miscellaneous parks. That replaces fencing when we have trees come down and damage them. Replacing chains and seats, they get very dry rotted, the seats of the swing sets. They get rotted out, we have to change out the chain every so often, so it's not a hazard. Fencing, like I said, fencing, bleachers, we do a lot of upgrades, and then the majority of that money is actually playground fibers. We have to put down a certain amount, 9 inches of playground fibers for safety reasons at all of the parks. So when we're building the parks, I'm trying to consolidate the areas a little more so it doesn't take so much playground fiber. But we have a lot of ground to cover with Balmer's, Linden, Fairchild Park, Legion. We have a lot of parks that we have to, so the majority of that $30,000 line item goes to playground fibers. They have to be a special mulch to go down there.
Okay. Next item is the 6 golf carts. Replacement on our rotation every year we request 6, and it's apparently done a great job. We've got a fairly decent fleet at this point, but we still have some older carts.
And keeps up with the rotation to.
Yep.
We started what, 10 years ago?
Next is a multi-pro sprayer for the golf course. This is used to spray weed killers, antifungals, all this fertilizers, broadleaf weed killers and such. Our current unit is 15 years old. It's breaking down. They're having the same problems finding parts as well. I think for the last, we're spending $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a year maintaining it at this point. And apparently due to the corrosive natures of the chemicals they use, it damages all the wands and everything, so they need to be constantly repaired. And this has been on our list for, I don't know, 6 years, but it keeps getting pushed back. So we're thinking it's time at this point. And that is a a 10-year leasing loan. It's not, saying that. At least in my thing.
What's the, I don't mean to bring up the sore subject for the golf course. I'm looking at somebody.
There are no sole subjects.
What's the net revenue at the end of the fiscal year that the golf course makes?
Define that revenue.
What's that? Like, what's the, I mean, people pay to golf and all that, so like, what's
Let me
the,
say it this way.
or any other incomes that it brings in, what's it net?
When we started, we took in 325,000 from carts and, fees, etc. Last year we hit 900, so it's doing great. Now, when you say net, we have two and a half employees maintain the golf course. We have a golf pro and an assistant golf pro. So, it makes a profit. There's various ways to calculate what that would be. But, and by the way, the fees are low and we could charge more too. It's, I'm just saying there's a lot of, discussion about that at the golf commission.
We raised the out of town fee this
We
year.
raised the out of town fees this year.
Yeah.
Okay. The town fees the same, raised across the board for all out of town.
Paris,
They come talk about, take care of our bunch of people.
56% increase.
That's it.
For out of town, it's an out of town carry, 56%.
Okay. Next is a large, leaf blower. They have a smaller one like this, but it is, I don't know, 25 years old, I'm guessing. Anyway, so this would allow them to clear the greens and the fairways of the leaves in the fall faster, open the course quicker. And
Make more revenue.
well, buy the green, you don't have to go on the green, you just.
As Scott says, they can really do this. Shut down for shut them up.
Okay. I believe the last item is our annual sewer maintenance line item. With obviously a contract with Veolia to maintain our sanitary sewer pipes. In that contract has a stipulated minimum that the town puts in for maintenance, and this is the minimum. We do put it in the capital funds. It allows us to plan a little bit more. Obviously, if it was a regular account, there's just no way we could plan to spend everything. We do hold back on our maintenance for a disaster. So if something happens, we have, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 if something big happens. So we like to try to keep a little bit into the following year, so that we've always got projects on them. I think in the years coming, the contract does expect us to start to ramp up our expenditures on there, and so does the EPA. For our CMOM order that we have, they're expecting more maintenance to our sewer to hopefully eliminate overflows and those getting into the river.
So that EPA requirement, is that a monetary or not? You just keep doing better?
Well, what they do is they look at your backups. You have no backups, and they assume that you're doing.
We're not under an order to say spend 500,000 next year.
No, we're not.
Right.
We're in an order to show them that we're making improvements.
Right, and we are.
And we are making improvements. Yes.
Okay.
And we're hopefully we got a few more things to do. And we're hoping to request that order be lifted. We've done, almost all the items that they requested. So we're hoping we can get freed from that requirement.
Okay.
And I think that's it.
That's everything for DPW. Any questions? All right, let's move on.
Thank you.
Let me just say one thing, Jim. So, in summary, if everything was approved, that's, you know, about 1.3 million more than last year. So just to give you an idea of, it's hard to absorb all those things at once, but that's a little more than $1 million over what we spent on capital last year.
Pete? What do we have next?
Community service.
Community service.
Mine is Connecticut Partnership for Children, which already happened.
Yep.
The last one. And River Brigade
All right, community service, where are you?
in the front.
See ya.
Good night.
Good luck. All right, so back to that handout that should have been in the front of your binder, with the page 1 of 1. Who's presenting that? Will we get to here? Sure. Community service.
About
Oh my God. For it.
where is it? What do you want me?
Well, we got just the page 1 of 1 minus the River Brigade, which we did, and the Connecticut Partnership, which we've already completed. It looks
Okay.
like there's no change.
So the health district, we got something today, Allison. Is that the same number?
Yes, it's an $874 increase.
Sorry, CCM. Northwest is a contract, right?
Yep,
Elderly nutrition. What about, I don't know much about that.
For now.
That's in that the
Well,
home
now,
delivery,
yeah, that's a home delivery. So it's the same as last year. CCM, Council of Governments. Greater Waterbury, Naugatuck Valley redevelopment. I think that it's gonna go down now.
I don't have anything on that, but that would be wonderful. We'll take it
Yeah.
down.
I think it's gonna go, I think it goes down. Well, everything else is the same, right?
Real estate planning, why is that?
Oh. So real estate planning is just sort of a catch-all for overall townwide development. So it's like a safety net, I guess you'd say.
Okay. Any other questions for community service?
I don't know why it's under community service, but it's including out the community service, because we should put it somewhere else, I think, Allison.
You want to move a real estate planning under community service? Is what you're
No, I
saying?
would say
Or
we'll put it somewhere else.
just the real estate planning line item, those what? That's great. Yeah, got it.
And we'll take down NDRBC.
All right, last and not least, Allison. We're gonna start with townwide, that's A03 in the binder.
These are general expenses that basically are incurred by the town collectively. And I have an increase on maintenance and building grounds. If you recall, last year we consolidated it from all the departments to put it into townwide because there are so many buildings that are being managed in Jim Stewart's area. And we wanted to have a collective area. Based on this past fiscal year with additional properties that the town owns, I have a projection that we're going to need 100,000 more. 50 of that is an ADA program that Bill Hirschman and Jim are working on together. And there's a great deal of ADA projects involved that we put 50,000 toward. Water has the basic Connecticut water projection estimates for the next fiscal year, and that's going to be an increase of $46,000. We had an increase in usage of telephone, so I'm adding another 27. A lot, same with electricity. And if you recall, in the Burgess meeting, we approved East River. We locked down on some lower rates than the prior fiscal year. So we're incurring $60,000 and $10,000 savings to a net of $146,000 increase.
You say telephone. What do we get charged for using the phone more?
Conference calls?
So it's conference call system that
Yeah.
we use, it's not
Right.
the actual telephone.
Correct.
The telephones themselves, it should be an extra every year.
You're absolutely correct.
I'd imagine it's, and correct me if I'm wrong, like the licenses to run those conference calls. I don't think we're billed on like a per minute basis like it used to be.
Not per minute. It might be per conference call, but not per minute.
Okay.
I just don't. I know it would be beneficial to work on phasing it out and looking into another project, another way of communicating. But I have a slight increase, so I need to address that. Yes, I like that.
Zoom calls. Is there a charge for this?
That's in the IT budget.
There's for free, there's a minimum time limit. I got cut off in the meeting once, and I only had the free service. So after like 30 minutes, they knocked it off and I could find the subscription.
About Teams, my base of 30 minutes.
I use it as an excuse, thank you.
That would be in the IT budget. If we were going to re-enhance it, it would be shifting out of here and going over.
Not a lot of money, but
Yeah, there's no licensing for any of them. It doesn't. They're all the same. Any other questions for Tom White? All right, moving along, we already did the Naugatuck Event Center, so let's do debt service B6, please.
So the first four line items are relating to the bonds that we have out for debt. And every year, the interest and the principal shift between each bond based on the interest rate for that particular year of borrowing. So they'll pretty much be a level set and not that much of a change net, but the interest will go up and down depending upon what year bonding we're dealing with within that 20 or 25-year bond range.
The net decrease of 514,124.
Right, and that's mostly with lease payments. We paid off a couple leases this past year, and we re-amortized the trucks. We were doing a lease on a 5-6 year, but these were vehicles that were lasting in excess of 10. So as a savings, we re-amortized them out to 10 years. These are the big ones, not police or theirs, where they have longevity in their vehicles.
yeah, big one.
But keep them good. It's right, lasting.
Right,
That's right.
and that's it. We're dead.
You want it or not?
Okay.
Any other debt service questions? All right, pensions, B7, next one.
So social, wow, I can't even say that now. It's getting late. Social Security and Medicare payments are based off the salary increases. So when they get up when they go up, it's the same percentage for Social Security, Medicare. Those go up in conjunction. So that increase is due to that. The same with the DCP plans. You get more money, your match goes up. Then third and fourth line items are our pension contributions. So employees contribute to the pension, but the employer has to contribute to the pension. And that is determined by an actuarial valuation done by our actuaries every year. And that's based on the number of employees that are majorly based on the number of employees that are still active employees, but have a pension plan. So as those go down, this will start to go down. And it also is based on how well the interest rate did in the pension fund. So when the pension interest rate goes up and the people retire down, and there's less active people, this will go down. And so this year, it's just a little bit of a change.
Any questions regarding pension? All right, insurance, B08.
So every year, we sit down with, USI, who is our, insurance broker, and they put, most of the policies out, or they put them all out, into the market. And it doesn't really lock down until after we have to approve our budget. So these are estimates that our insurance broker give us of what they think each one of these policies are gonna do in the market for this year. So, these are, USI broker estimates. The, insurance, the health insurance is based on, changes in, annual actual premiums paid. And the dental self-insured insurance and what we've been incurring through self-insurance, which really hasn't been changing that much.
So all in all, it's just shy of $150,000 increase.
Correct.
Compared to previous year,
Correct.
actually not bad.
I know, I was kind of pleased with cyber too.
I'm very surprised.
It's so,
that-
I was told it's getting less and less volatile. But I have to say this out loud as a real compliment. I'm looking at you, James, to IT. They have, Jim has really done a very good job in, holding down cybersecurity, and the tighter you keep that cybersecurity, the lower the, insurance is gonna be, the more insurable we're gonna be, and the biggest thing at all, I can't say enough, is it is one of the top things that affect our bond rating is cybersecurity. And so every year when Jim goes out, when USI goes out for cybersecurity, this huge questionnaire comes back to Jim and IT, and they ask them all these questions about how we're managing the security of our IT systems. And it's a huge report card. And if we don't come clean, we could actually lose our insurance.
Yeah, I'm on the
Yeah.
cyber committee.
So let me do you see that?
So, they ask about,
Report. Yeah, we can.
we just finished recently our penetration test, but phishing. There's dozens and dozens. He probably has like 7 pages of questions from the insurers. And then they take these answers and they put it out into the market. And if we fail any of that, we have a serious problem with our bond rating people. And they're looking at our financials and cybersecurity every single year. It never goes away.
All right. Did we miss farmer's market 8:33 or we did that already?
It was part of
That was, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't have that crossed up. Chief McAllister, did you have something?
We have our presentation regarding communication. So Lee, if you could turn over the PowerPoint, I would like to have our control, Matt Tolan, take over.
Yeah, Colin, which one do you want up first? Do you want the
Yeah,
town
yeah.
radio system?
You could do the radio dispatcher.
While this is getting pulled up, I didn't miss anyone in the room. Last time I felt bad, I missed the library board. No one else in the room is for a smaller presentation before we get into the. Oh,
Lee, if you
Okay.
could do the dispatch one first. Communication center one. So for everyone who hasn't met Matt Cohen before, he's been working with us for about a year now on our communication center, as well as our radio system. Not only to introduce himself, he's with the wealth of knowledge here, he's been helping out to grow quite a bit.
Pat Cohen, was contracted to work at the town, implement these 2 projects, started with a needs assessment study we performed in 2024. It's nice to, good to work with Nartec, grew up in Nartec, went through the school system and, back here, parents still live in Nartec as well, so. hoping to show you a couple of new projects for the betterment of the town moving forward. One thing I want to mention before Matt starts is Matt does not work for any vendor or any company. He works with us. So he gets, whatever we decide to do, he gets no benefit of it. Right, I work as a liaison with the vendors for the town.
Lee, pick it up if you want.
Are you
Are you
seeing the slides, Colin, or not?
Oh, okay, you turn it over on this one?
Yeah, you just let me know when you need me to move on.
Yep, you could just start the slideshow. Yeah.
So basically, just to give you a high level, so all this stuff was encapsulated in the 2024 study that was performed that identified communication systems in their existing state, as well as gap analysis on the communication system as they existed, with certain solutions to move forward to streamline the dispatch center, and secondarily, as a separate but related project, communication systems that go for the emergency services and other county services.
Next slide.
So real high level, if you have any specific questions, we can get into any of these deeper. Again, we did a presentation on this for anyone that isn't familiar with this. Currently, there's 3 PSAPs, which are the 911 or dispatch centers that serve the borough of Naugatuck, one of which being a fire department, one of which police department, and then contracted services with Northwest Public Safety or EMS. 2 of them are fully established PSAPs, meaning they have 911 equipment and 911 answering capabilities, and the fire department is not considered to be a 911 PSAP location. We can go over call workflow, which really identifies some of the gaps and some of the ways that we can improve the system. I don't necessarily want to call them inefficiencies, but some of the redundancies that have to be done anytime somebody calls for emergency services. So currently, if you pick up your phone, you dial 911, it gets answered at the police department. The police department will do the call entry, basically trying to determine what the location of the call is, what the problem is, and what services are needed. If it is a fire-related call, they will then take that call and transfer it over to the fire department, who has to do those same entry questions because there's no technology that connects the two, such as computer-aided dispatching, and other data is not transferred over to the fire department dispatch center because there's no 911 equipment. So again, it starts with the exact same line of questioning. What's the address of the emergency? What's the phone number? What's the problem? And the caller's giving that information again. If the call is medical in nature, it's transferred up to Northwest Public Safety. Some of that information, just the 911 data, is transferred because again, they are an equipped 911 PSAP, but they have to go through their line of questions. So, it's almost as if that call hasn't been touched yet, because they have to take that, they have to take the address, they have to revalidate the address, they have to take the nature, enter in all their call entry questions to get that determination, and that's just to get that call dispatched out. You can go ahead, next one. The current fire dispatch center, as we discussed, is not PSAP, so it is not 911 capable. They also lack other technologies that are pretty much standard across the board for dispatching services, such as computer-aided dispatch to determine what appropriate responses would be, what the closest units and response districts, based on the nature of call that comes in. As far as system redundancy and reliability, they are lacking modern technology such as how they connect into the actual radio system itself. So these are pictures that were taken. Currently, they're using what are called control stations. So basically, mobile radios that are mounted in a building to tie into their system. So there's really no failover. There's no way for them to know if a system component fails because it's not a monitored system. You can go ahead, next one. So the police department, this photo is intentionally blurry because there is law enforcement sensitive information in here, so that wasn't just a lack of attention. Police department is a little better off, but again, most of their equipment is facing end of life, end of support. as well. So their console equipment that they're currently using is no longer sold. It's discontinued by the manufacturer. And probably about 3 to 4 years, that will come completely out of support as well. Their 911 system and technology phone system is up to date because that is a state provided system and state maintained system. But again, we're looking to streamline the process, right? Because time is muscle, right? When it comes to health, from cardiac events, strokes, all that time that it takes to process and dispatch resources. Faster you can get the appropriate resources out to the scene, the better the outcome, the decrease in morbidity and mortality. And so what we do is when we look at the system design, how do we process this and speed up getting the right resources to the right place? You can go ahead. And so these are the main gaps. Again, there's a whole study that's published on this, but the main gaps and takeaways. Discontinued equipment at both locations. Right now, there's the multiple points of failure. So we kind of touched on it a few minutes ago, but the probability of a drop call is fairly high. So with not having that 911 equipment at the fire department, the police dispatcher, if they don't stay on the phone while they're transferring that call out, there's no positive feedback that the fire department actually got that call. So now you're taking that dispatcher that's sitting in the police department, you're tying up their valuable time to process additional calls coming in, answering units that are out on the street, because they have to stay on that call until it's sent over to the fire department, or in the case of EMS, sent up to Northwest to be processed to make sure that that call is effectively transferred. Again, without 911, you lose feedback that's built into the technology. So if the call drops going to Northwest, they will get an abandoned alert, meaning a call was dropped. The fire department, it transfers out of the 911 system into the public switch system in the phones. And so there's no feedback. It was essentially calling a 10-digit number and transferring that 911 call. That goes very much against best practices because the 911 system is a hardened network. It's private, it's a lockdown network, it's monitored. When you take that call and you remove it out of the system, you put it in the public switch, it's no different than you trying to call somebody on their cell phone and our phone never rang, right? How many times do you get that? And that's essentially where you're passing off that 911 call to. Again, no computer dispatch like we had talked about, so they're not getting data that's entered in the police department that's valuable for response or for responder safety or important critical information that should be is obtained from the caller isn't getting relayed to all those services because the systems aren't connected together. So the police department dispatcher may stay on that call, for example, and they may get additional critical information. They have to call over to the fire department so that the fire department dispatcher can relay that information to the responding units because they don't share a CAD system. So comments entered by one center aren't transferred over to the other one, and that information is not shared.
How many phone calls? Sorry? How many phone calls are coming into the system on a yearly basis? I don't have that off the top of my head. We do have a program that monitors the fire department. And again, that was one of the gaps that was identified in the study was that we can't analyze traffic coming to the fire department because it's coming over standard phone lines. We do have software that can look at the police department and get that live data for you. So I don't recall.
Minimum about 30,000 calls a year minimum, but it's probably much higher than what's going to account for duplicate calls.
Yeah, and how many would those not dropped calls? How many would be abandoned? Meaning the person who's calling hung up before the dispatcher answered.
It would be anecdotal to answer that, but I can say in my experience, it happens quite a bit.
Yeah.
You do get a lot of 911. People will start to dial. They're trying to dial out from an office extension, dial 99, and then to dial a long distance call, and then they realize they hang up. The 911 system captures that. The second 911 is dialed, even if they hang up right away, the system captures that and transfers the data over. So there are a lot of abandoned 911 calls that were just accidental in nature. All right. And then one of the other gaps is right now inefficiency with the personnel assignments. So if the police department is getting busy, they're taking multiple calls, having to deal with something, and fire department's not on a call, their fire dispatchers is in the center doing their administrative tasks and other work-related tasks, but they're not able to help with that acute situation that the police dispatcher is taking, and vice versa. You know, police departments got it in a lower call volume time, and fire department has a structure fire going on. They're not in the same facility where they're able to assist each other in getting tasks done. So that kind of makes, you know, an inefficient balance of personnel workloads. You can go to the next one. So we looked at a few solutions. This is one that was most amenable by the town, which was a joint dispatch center. So we're taking two of the centers and combining them into a single location, modernizing the equipment, you know, connecting and moving the fire department up to those systems that they're currently lacking. Again, computer-aided dispatch, updated phone systems, things like that, and trying to leverage, you know, shared resources. That's kind of where your cost savings are. It's all very expensive, highly technical equipment. So, but where you can take some of that equipment and share it across the board is where you start to see the efficiencies and cost essentially cost savings, because you're not buying as much equipment. So the proposed solution is a combined dispatch center located at the police department, which involves some of the building reconfiguration, as well as upgrading two portions of the police department itself. This is a architectural rendering based on a study that was done by Chakoutsky and Humes, who was the architect hired to design the facility. You can go ahead. So this is the proposed layout in the room. Currently, the dispatch center is immediately off of the lobby as you walk into the police department. That does give some distractions to the dispatcher. Let's see, if people are walking up in the lobby, that's the first thing they're seeing right there. So there's distraction. There's a certain level of exposure. Obviously, the center is hardened, but it's still glass. So the proposal moves the center out of that front publicly exposed area into a training room that is a room and a hallway back into that. So repurposing that training room and bringing that room up to the necessary updates needed to support a 911 facility. Important things when you're doing a 911 facility is you need to be able to kind of protect in place is the goal. So having those facilities secured, having those facilities with you know, redundant power, redundant HVAC systems, all that is important, because not only is the equipment very expensive in there, but you're also assuming a certain level of risk when you try and relocate those people out due to whatever it ends up being, you know, a fire alarm, smoke in the building, you know, a piece of equipment that burns up somewhere because it shorts out. Being able to keep them in the center working is important. So trying to separate a lot of those critical systems in that center is important. All right, so currently the proposed solution is for four positions. The state will determine your 911, so you know, we can call them 911 positions, but really the state is going to decide how many actual 911 terminals you have based on call loading. But the positions themselves will have dispatch consoles in them, and that allows an absorption for storms, for other surge. So if an officer is coming in off the road to assist dispatch, you know, during a surge, they can come in and have a seat ready for them. So right now, there's currently 3 positions in the dispatch center. In the dispatch system. So the fire department and the police department have 2 dispatch positions. There's at peak times, non-acute, non-surge times, such as storms, they may have up to 3 telecommunicators working. And so this allows for a certain level of failure and anticipated redundancy in the system by adding the 4th position into the console. So if a console position goes down, they can just simply get up and relocate to another position without having to really impact any of the operations. And you can move on. A theoretical rendering for what the center would look like in that back room. This was architecturally designed using most likely the vendors that would be selected. All the equipment, at least in the rendering here, is available on state contract pricing, which makes that procurement process a lot easier. You go ahead. So our implementation process, needs analysis, we've completed and identified the needs, the gaps, how do we overcome those gaps? Budget development, you'll see in the next or the slide after that, which is a breakdown based on the architectural design. We're at the point now where it's time to start securing funding to move forward. We'll do a final design review at that point, which is just kind of tweaking and making sure that products are available, that they haven't been discontinued, making sure anything that's being procured isn't at an end of life cycle. Just again, trying to leverage and maintain stuff for as long as it can be used. Site preparation, issuance of contracts, the actual room modifications that have to be made with electrical needs and HVAC needs. Right now, this is the room that was discussed earlier where most of the time it's not occupied and it's used as a training. As soon as you take all this electrical equipment and you start putting in your thermal loading changes, you need to rebalance air conditioning to offset that. It all ends up having to be taken into account. Construction, testing and training. One of the benefits to moving to all new equipment is it allows the two centers to remain operational while the center is built. A lot of times when a center is being upgraded, you don't have that. You're not fortunate enough to have that opportunity. So if you're renovating an existing center, you're shutting it down, you're trying to do half of the center, move everybody over, do another half of the center. Because it's being relocated in the building, both the fire department and police department centers can remain operational during the construction until testing and training has been completed and then a cutover date is established. And the next. So this is the anticipated project worksheet. These numbers were adjusted so that the target start time would be crossed over 2 fiscal years to split the burden of the project itself. Obviously, it is a large project. It is a necessary one, but it's spread over 2 years. So ideally, the construction would start about exactly a year from now. Would be ideal, which will then wrap up the end of fiscal year 26 into fiscal year 27. Pricing has a 5% escalator from today's pricing because again, there's a 1 year delay. We have no idea where it's predicted. So until we look at CPI over the next few years, basically. The current pricing shows moving the existing console system. One of the phases in the next project that's going to be proposed is actually the replacement of the console system. That's an option. The goal initially was to run these projects somewhat concurrently, separate projects somewhat concurrently. If the timeline for as far as the approval process goes through, we would take those console procurement and move them to the front of the radio system project so that new equipment could be installed in the dispatch center for day one. That does cut down on the cost of having to move old equipment into the new dispatch center, and it minimizes that disruption that we were just talking about. But again, it's 2 separate projects, and really again depends on the approval for concurrency of those projects. Breakdown covers the structural changes in the room. There's a project contingency that's very common for a project like this because there has to be room changes, construction in the room. You go to open up a wall and something inside that wall isn't exactly what the drawings were. Now you have to account for it. So it's not there as a slush fund, but it's there to then take into account anything that just isn't as was done in the plans. One of the things that you'll see a lot of times is a drawing may show that there's a boring through a floor down into a lower area, and that's where you're going to run your conduit and your electrical, and they didn't actually put it in. So now you have to go and hire a concrete company to bore the floor and anything else. So this is the proposed budget for this project.
Would you like us to run through the other one too, and we discuss them kind of concurrently, or?
I just have a question, if that's okay.
Yep, go ahead.
Oh,
I've got them too, so go ahead.
So, My first job 41 years ago was a dispatcher in Trumbull. I graduated with a degree in criminal justice. I worked for the Trumbull PD, and at that time, I was dispatching fire, police, and ambulance at the same time over 40 years ago, okay? It's situated in the police department. I could never understand why Naugatuck didn't do that. And it has come up in the past on finance board as, can you remember that? I don't know, Chief McAllister, if you remember that, but question is, you're talking about police and fire, why not ambulance?
So that was examined, that was discussed. That's not necessarily something that can't be done down the road. The call volume for EMS is substantial. The time investment now, one of the things that has changed since then is EMD, emergency medical dispatch. So legislatively, and statutorily now, you're required to process a medical call in a particular way with a particular set of questions, remain on the line with that caller in certain situations, and offer pre-arrival instructions. So that's a very time-consuming process, and it probably would not be able to be done with the existing staff. Not to say it can't, but could it be better to implement this in a phased approach?
Yeah, no,
In
that's
a
fine,
phased
yeah.
approach and then re-examine that down the road based on the workload in the new combined.
Because I was thinking maybe the cost savings of using an external dispatch would offset it, but not.
Just to upset that, even if we did our own internal EMS dispatch, we still need to contract with public safety coordination. So that's part of the fee.
Still have that medical control through them, no matter what.
So they coordinate all the ambulances and mutual agency ambulances. That's
Okay.
required by state law.
Okay, thank you, that's new. So again, going back, so we were in the lobby, currently the way it's situated, and if I'm not mistaken, when I've been to the police department, isn't the dispatchers the one that come to the lobby window?
So they've more or less abandoned direct public access through the window now. It's all done through telephone, and we actually just completed a video intercom system.
Okay.
So for a lot of the security reasons we've been discussing, it's generally more industry standard to move them away from the public. And with technology, we can still have face-to-face conversation with the public on site, but moving them away. It seems to be the trend. I mean, Matt, you can speak to that. It is something we discussed a lot and did come up several times.
Right, so over the years, demands for emergency services have increased. Not just, it's a national, it's not just Naugatuck. More people calling in, more services being needed. So there's really been a focus on redirecting the attention of the telecommunicator from like a generalized clerical position into a specialized focusing on processing and dispatching of related units. So, even implementation of automated call directors. So we used to just dump right into dispatch, right? You call the main number of the police department, and every call just went in and had to be processed by the telecommunicator. But as their job has become a lot more than just picking up a 911 call and then just talking on the radio, that's required a refocus of their attention.
Okay. Like I said, I just, it's a good thing I haven't been there in a very long time. I want to make sure the public was able to see somebody and not just talk on the phone. So that's good. Just my last question. So we put all this together and I am 1000% in favor of something like this. I think this is what our town needs. So now we do this and it's done 2027. We're off and running. And now we've got this great dispatch center. And because we put all of our eggs in one basket, buying all the equipment at the same time, how long before everything has to be replaced at the same time? And is that something that is built into this where like almost similar to the police patrol cars and the air pack replacements?
So there's a lifespan and everything has its own replacement cycle. However, it is staggered. So you won't be looking at having to do everything all at once.
Okay.
So the consoles, obviously, they have their own life cycle process. The consoles that we're meeting with the engineers on and are looking at are the newest console available because the previous generation already has an expiration date stamped on it. So replacing with that increases the longevity of the consoles. Your CAD computers they're replaced a lot more frequently and then they're running their own set of servers. We're not looking at replacing CAD servers right now because those are up to date and those are maintained in the operational.
Yeah, through our IT budget.
So those don't need to be replaced anyway. In the next project that we're gonna talk about, and again, they're related, and that's why they kind of run concurrently. Some of the equipment we're possibly gonna be able to reuse from the existing radio systems based on the warranty and service agreements with the current providers. So the borough is entitled to certain equipment being updated under that agreement, which will work in the new system.
So you're gonna talk about the radios and the cell towers also tonight?
Yes, we have that.
Okay, but let me just say one thing. As painful as it is, this is a real public safety issue. So what we've been talking about is starting building it, we'll say in June of 26, which means that our next budget year starts just after that. So we can take this project, say, for example, 1,000,004, we could say 400,000 in the capital budget we're working on now, but commit next year to the capital expense and work the contract out so that our payments would be due over 2 fiscal years. So, how we break that up will depend on where we wind up. But the idea would be that we have to do it. We have to do the radios he's gonna talk about next. And we got good news on the cell towers, and we'll actually make money on the cell towers. But at the end of the day, we wanna have not just the dispatch center, but, like when we had the flood, police, street, fire, no one could talk to each other on the radios. It's gotta be fixed. So,
and there was no common control point either. Right? It was, everyone was spread out.
Let's just say, we could sit here all night, but the projects are interrelated. So the dispatch, the radios, the cell towers, pretty complicated. These guys had spent a lot of time putting it together. And the pain is in how we pay for it. So we're trying to come up with a plan that will minimize the impact in the budget we're working on. But the following year will take the bigger hit in capital.
It was very nice of the mayor to say that the painful part wasn't listening to talk about it.
How many, oh no, go ahead. I'll wait.
I'm just looking at the to be determined costs, expenses. I was wondering if it is possible to sort of put an estimate so your budgeting thing could be more realistic.
Yeah, so the legal fees, I think that's gonna depend on your contracting services with your internal legal department, how much they're able to do. So, and also any bonding, execution of bonding costs. Administrative costs, most of this project is gonna be managed internally. So most of them are salaried positions that already exist in the system, in the process. Most of the vendors are going to assign project managers, which is built into their costs, so that's not something that's passed on to the town. And then
the other part here too was the engineering fees and the architectural, as well as the project management fees. We would have a project manager that we would subcontract, but they would still need to have a point of contact with us to work with them. But that would be built into their job function on either police or fire side.
right, so if you're legal, for example, and the reason it was to be determined by the owner is how much of this do you want carried out by your internal legal department versus contracting it out, which is really.
We're not gonna bond it, too small, so it'll be in our legal budget, you're only gonna have to put it in your budget.
And that's why it was to be determined, because obviously there's a certain level of human capital, but it might not be allocated to this project, it might just be part of your day-to-day operations.
So how many FTEs do we have working in the fire side of just this dispatch right now?
To fire dispatchers, just one per shift.
One
One
per shift.
Yes,
So
no,
the
we-
one person for 24 hours.
24 hours, yes. So there's
Okay.
4 dispatchers. though.
Four, thank you. And then how many do we have on the police side?
6.
And how many will that be reduced or changed by once this all comes together as one?
Well, that's gonna bring the next part of this up, which is the contract negotiations with local 1219 and the dispatchers union. We're in a fortunate position. This has been talked about for 40 years. Local 1219 is on board with this. They want to work with us on developing dispatchers. That's the first time it's ever happened.
20 years ago, that wasn't true, because Kenny and I tried working on this back then when I was on the commission from 05 to 15. That's how long we've been talking about this. And the next section is probably even more important when we get to the townwide radio system. I'll tell you a story then.
So the bottom line is the final number we haven't determined yet.
Okay.
Based on the call volume.
Now, the 4 stations that will come out of this, the workable stations, is there opportunity for us to regionalize in which we can get incomes from other towns for additional coverage? Whether
There
it's
is,
Beacon
and-
Falls, Prospect, whatever.
Yeah, there is, and it's not an uncommon process, recently done in
You're
Fairfield.
working on that now?
Yes, we've had some very informal conversations, but some of our neighboring communities have kind of wanted to see where this process comes along. Some that join us that are very, would not impact our call volume that much, but they're currently paying outside vendors 200 to 300,000 a year, so there could be some cost offset with that. But we definitely need to, they're curious and we do get inquiries, I guess is how it's written.
So thank you for bringing up, that segues me to my next question. Why not, and I'm not suggesting this, but just from being inquisitive, why not outsource this to like a Northeastern Communication or whatever dispatch centers there might be that are, I guess, privatized? Like what's the advantage here?
So you obviously, you maintain a certain level of autonomy. So policy and operationally speaking, you can adjust, you can pivot your operation on a much quicker basis. So you're delivering core critical emergency services. And obviously there's certain services throughout town that it makes sense to privatize. We did actually discuss with Northwest some of the options based on numbers that they gave back. They were not committed in the initial quote, at least, to maintain services that are currently being provided. Such as prisoner monitoring, guaranteed staffing, dedicated services to the borough itself. So basically, the rough quote that was provided was, you give them the service and they'll tell you what services what you're gonna get and to what level you're gonna get. And you lose that ability, again, for critical emergency services to dictate. And you're also part of a pool. It's not a bad thing necessarily, but you become part of a pool. So Waterbury gets busy, it's their coverage area is the immediate area. So if something comes through, storm comes through, it's going to affect the whole area. Now, Naugatuck is a part of that cog versus being able to manage the services. Plus, you don't know what dispatcher you're gonna get. There's a lot to be said for somebody familiar with the town. If a 911
I
call
agree.
comes in and says there's an accident at the Four Corners, local people know where that is, that dispatcher isn't there, no.
I'm local and I don't know where that is.
Well, there's that accident there.
The other thing I wanted to ask, by moving this all into one center, and since the systems don't communicate together now, it's a moot point, but what happens if the police department burns down in a disaster recovery situations? Where's the recovery site?
So the system requires, the 911 system requires a level of recovery. So that gets predetermined where your 911 calls are rerouted. Part of the radio system itself upgrade allows you that flexibility to move to any of the other centers that are connected to the same network. So the project that is going to be gone over is connectivity to the state radio system, which then is on a state fiber network for its consoles. And so those become accessible resources wherever you go. So you could determine who your backup dispatch center would be. Most likely it would be a partnership with Northwest just because of proximity and their consoles are connected on the state system. And then you just make your resources are a click away from showing up on their consoles.
Perfect.
So right now, we do not have a backup for fire dispatch. If we were to lose our fire dispatch, we can do some very limited dispatching for PD. We cannot duplicate our dispatch center right now.
And currently, we do have redundancy with Northwest, they have our councils and our abilities, so we do currently have that. So
This 1.45 million or 445 million that you have, does that include this radio system purchase and stuff? All right, so let's jump into that unless there's any other dying questions.
One
Go ahead.
question, I don't know if this impacts, but we have a lot of development going on and a lot of different projects. Does all of that impact this project? And is there plans for, that eventuality?
No, but it helps us serve those projects when they come online, with the additional people living in town with Amazon.
Okay, so, okay, just want to make sure, because we have an awful lot going on.
The redundancy in efforts to process a single call
Right.
gets cut down. And
Right.
so therefore, they're able to process more calls without adding, immediately adding additional resources
I
because
got you.
they're on resources of dispatch and they're off the call a lot faster.
When we get to the telecommunications part, the plan is going to be complete in that all of these areas, even the new ones that are being created, will be covered in this. We're not gonna just leave off Walmart like we do now.
That's that's phase 3, the cell towers that we just got the
Okay.
info on, so.
Okay, I just wanna make sure I'm asking that
Are you
question.
gonna talk about that tonight? Okay, all right, good.
All right, let's go.
All right, okay. Lee, can you switch over to the Naugatuck Townwide radio system in the PowerPoint?
Now, while you're doing that, I think it's important to bring up too, just, I think everybody understands, when you're looking at big price tags, it is heavy to see it. Correct me if I'm wrong, this is not a 1.5 million versus 0, where we just go forever at 0. There will be a high cost.
That is a great point. So even if you were to decide to do nothing, the consoles are still gonna have to be upgraded.
To get to the fire department, even the standard is gonna, I don't know the cost, but I mean.
it could be around that.
Around that cost, it could be $1 million.
You have to weigh all that out, cost.
Right, this isn't, we can just roll for another 10 years where we're going.
All right, so to touch on, this one is a little more higher level because the project is a little further out. We're working with the engineers from the state, from Motorola and from Norcom, just the end of last week. So we're still waiting for hard numbers to come back. So the numbers that you're gonna see in here are just to kind of give you just a taste of what's coming and what the scope of the project is gonna be. And it will have those numbers revised for you. You can go to the next slide. So currently, the current situation is was discussed. People can't talk to each other right now. Your responders, public works, they can't communicate now. Every one of them is on a disparate system that doesn't connect at any point. They're called conventional systems, meaning each agency has its own infrastructure, each agency has its own antennas, each agency has its own base radios at every single site throughout the town. Currently, the town is operating on 5 sites to get the coverage that was deemed necessary. Police department is on UHF, fire department's on VHF, and EMS is already cut over to the proposed new system. But they have a lot of coverage gaps because the system hasn't been upgraded to give those the filled coverage they have. So right now, any investments or any improvements in the existing systems, or if you were to forklift and replace the existing systems with a similar type, that you don't leverage improvement benefits across the board. So if you need to fill a gap, like you want to cover Walmart, for example, you need to put a site there that's going to have the police department's equipment on it. You got to buy more equipment to cover the fire department, more equipment to cover your mess, and anyone else you want to add in there. The new system that's proposed is a shared network system, so that the core resources of that system are shared across all the users. So any improvements benefit all of the users as soon as that goes online.
I assume you mean disparate from that desperate radio
Yes.
systems?
Yes.
Okay.
Student teacher.
Okay. I can't help myself.
Desperate
I
too.
can't.
I mean, it's desperate also. Yeah.
I get that. I like disparate better.
So the system design currently is not adequate for borough emergency services. It's the state's land mobile radio system, Connecticut land mobile radio system. And it's made right now for mobile coverage in Naugatuck because Naugatuck hasn't built out the portion that they would need. So EMS has a lot of operational challenges, which is any building coverage inside of hospitals, things like that. Several of the components of the existing system are approaching end of life. So yeah, just like the dispatch center, it's not a zero or this project, like the components are still gonna have to be updated. The subscriber units, which are the mobile radios and portable radios by the fire and police department, are already past end of life and discontinued. So they are no longer eligible for service or repair, and so. I will tell you, the police department has bought parts offline to try and fix controls, and now the fire department has done the same, but the vendors won't touch those radios. So again, it's not a zero or this option. And you can go to the next slide. So the solution, what we did is we looked at what are the available options. Either what's called a conventional refresh, which is you just taking existing systems and putting new parts in and updating those. You still have to maintain 5 sites. The ballpark figures for that, you're looking at comparable, if not more, because you have more sites. We're actually going to reduce the number of kind of sites required in the new system because, as I said, it's a shared system. So there is some coverage in town now. You'll be able to use that existing coverage that's provided by the state and the neighboring communities that are on the system, and you just really have to fill in the gaps that were identified. This is going to allow all the town agencies to communicate directly with each other from their own radios, be able to switch, because again, they're using shared infrastructure. So if fire department and police department are operating at an incident and they will need to go to an interop channel to where the agencies and their responders can talk to check, it's a matter of clicking a channel versus having somebody stand next to somebody else and relay messages. You would also see improvements. The plan is to incorporate DPW into the project for their radio system upgrade when that system comes due. So currently I have a newer system, but when that's outdated, when that's outdated, or if they want to do a refresh just based on the coverage, I know they do have coverage gaps as well. You can phase that in, and it's not adding any additional project costs because the core infrastructure is already built as part of the project. And it leverages state-owned equipment. So that's really where the cost savings comes in. Previous project that I worked on, similar size demographic, little different topography wise. To build your own system of this nature was 4 times the cost because of all those components that now you have to own and maintain and license and refresh versus building off of an existing system. So really, again, all we're proposing in this project is building that coverage gap for areas that aren't covered right now. So you're not building the networking, you're not building the processing, you're not building all those other components that are the predominant cost of running one of these systems. That's all owned and maintained by the state. The town already has an MOU established with the state to allow them to go on the system, and there's no cost to go on the system with the state. It's a resource that the state has determined users can jump on. They just have to build out the coverage that they determine that they want or need. And then you go to the next slide. So implementation for this project, it's a little longer, but things can run a lot faster because they're smaller. Yeah, needs analysis. We identified coverage gaps. We identified disparate systems. We identified end of life legacy systems and components that are no longer able to be replaced. System engineering design, we just completed the end of last week. And that's where the good news comes in, as the mayor was touching upon, is that initially our theoretical design anticipated up to 3 sites being needed. The engineering design that was finalized and came back from the state engineers says that 2 sites will be adequate for coverage. And those 2 sites actually happen to coincide exactly with where planned tower sites were going to be built, cell tower sites. So that's gonna decrease the fiscal liability on the town quite a bit, because you're not actually building tower sites in that plan. So one of them being on Conrad Street, the water tower, and the one up New Haven Road, which is going to fix the Walmart gap. Basically, this is the implementation process. It spans the life of the project until cutover date. And you can go to the next slide.
So if we're going from 5 towers to 2, and then we find out 2 isn't enough,
They're pretty
Are
accurate,
they
conservative.
going to build us a third tower for free? And can we build that into our contract?
No, so you have to pay for what you determine you need. They're pretty
I thought the
accurate.
state determined that we only need two. Did I mishear you?
No, we determine the coverage threshold using public safety standards. And then
Okay.
the state says we can meet that standard with 2 sites.
I see.
So as part of the modeling, they use, it's all computer model, it's very accurate, is a worst case scenario, well, best case scenario is the radio in a vehicle down the street. We have 100% coverage in town, that's guaranteed. The worst case is I've got my radio on, I'm wearing a strap on my hip with the antenna next to my body, with a heavy jacket on in the basement of a house on Beacon Valley Road. That's a worst case scenario, that's what they model, the worst case scenario of communication. And they give us all different levels of that coverage. So we determine based on public safety standards, there's typically a minimum 95% coverage. We have it engineered with a portable on a hip because that's how public safety operates. And the state uses mobile because it's based off of troopers that are on the road on a mobile radio for the most part. Local public safety, we engineer portable on hip, and then we build in an additional error of what's called a decibel loss. So how much signal is going to be absorbed by that person, by the buildings, by their surroundings. So we engineered it with a 12 decibel loss, which is a moderate commercial building, non-super low energy, like a general commercial building has approximately 12 decibel loss. You would have to go do each building on a case-by-case basis to look at it. But we did identify several target hazards, such as schools and critical infrastructure in the town, to make sure that those areas would be covered. So the engineering study came back. The Motorola engineers and the state engineers feel that we could, with the 2 sites, attain that 95% portable on hip coverage with a 12 decibel loss. And then they use an acronym called the DAQ, the digital audio quality, which is how your voice is transferred over the network. So, does it occasionally break up? Is it clear? Anything above DAQ 3 is public safety grade. And they engineered it to a 3.4, which basically means almost every transmission is going to come across clear in a 12 decibel building into 95% of the town.
Which is probably an improvement over what all 3 of our services have. And something to note too is as infrastructure is built, we can address specific buildings when the construction comes up with augmenting the system. What's the name of it, Matt?
BEAs, building distributed amplifiers. So the construction code was changed, where now the AHJ can determine the town, the authority having jurisdiction, can determine if for major renovations or new construction, if a building amplifier is going to be required. And so that's based on a difference of coverage from the external portion of the structure to the internal portion. But the town can decide if that contractor has to do it at their cost as part of the building.
With our leftover 3 towers that'll be up, are we able to sell or lease those to, say, Verizon, Sprint, those networks to provide additional coverage?
Yes, and way better than that. The one on Conrad Street, we're projected to sell it for 1.5 million and retain free coverage on it. The one on New Haven Road will be similar, but it hasn't been spec'd out yet. But in other words, it's way better. It includes everything you asked, but more.
Yeah. Jim, for example, one of the sites we're using is a roof in town hall.
Yeah.
For a receiver. Another one is the Ion Bank.
Oh, so they're not all towers.
Right, they're not all towers as such. So there's Ion Bank. there's
I'm
Hall,
hoping we could sell each
congregate
tower for $1
housing.
million.
You're not
and pay for it.
gonna
There's no
necessarily
point.
release them because they're just antennas on the roof.
Yeah, the cellular carrier
All
is
right.
determining. We're also paying for a lease actually on the WTX tower.
Yeah.
Okay.
Forever.
So again, these are based on the budgetary numbers. And again, the whole point of this presentation to you was just to kind of like let you know what's coming as we get really identified rough order of magnitude quotes for the project from the engineers. So we just met at the end of the last week to agree on what the system needs were going to be. So ballpark, the sites themselves, not building the tower, but you're looking at about $800,000 to $1 million per site. That's for site improvements, infrastructure, on the tower itself, antennas, all the radio equipment that goes into it and all the data and processing of the system at the site. Microwave is the ideal backhaul for any of these sites. The engineers are still looking to see if you have a clear path for microwave. Otherwise, fiber can be used as backhaul to the sites. If you do lose a fiber leg, you may lose connectivity to one site, but it's not a full system degradation that you have to worry about. It's not one snip and the whole system's offline. But microwave does provide more resilient connectivity. So they are looking at that to make sure microwave is line of sight. So each point in that node has to see the other point. There can't be a tree, there can't be buildings or curvature, things like that have to be taken into account. So microwave costs, again, these are just rough industry estimates. The new tower construction is in there just as a placeholder, but again, it's not anticipated that the town is going to have to provide any tower construction at all. And communications shelters is a small building at the base of the tower where all the electronics are held. That has its own heating, air conditioning. Again, it is exposed and it's sensitive electrical equipment that's housed in there.
And each of them would have a generator?
Each one will have a generator. The state also, as part of construction, which is calculated in the site costs, as the state requires a specification of an 8-hour battery backup also. So a lot of that site building is just banks of batteries to keep that site running should the generator fail. So it's DC power supply. Any questions on this? All right, we go to the next slide. Again, still trying to solidifying numbers of the subscriber units that are needed, and that will then allow us to present you with an actual dollar amount. These are the list prices. These are purchasable on state contract with approximate 19% discount on state contract. But list price, these are the subscriber units, so all your mobiles and your portable radios that then would be replaced. And again, that's something that is you're going to face regardless of the system that you choose.
And most of our portables are end of life now, so we've been kind of limping them along now and not doing a large scale upgrade in anticipation of doing one upgrade through this project.
Does, Jeremy, does your department need a line of this or, I don't know, radios in your trucks and stuff? Does the Board of Ed need one?
I was under the understanding that we were getting full along with this, but I'm just telling you we're not.
No, it is built into the system.
To talk to each other, but you're building it into the portables for DPW two in this pricing and the mobiles?
In this price.
Okay.
Yeah, you existing radio so. Right, existing radio.
When you started talking about our newer stuff, that's kind of, that took me in another direction.
No. So one thing that, just to bring up on the operational side of this, in fact, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe there's 67 towns using this system statewide. Somewhere around there.
It's right around there.
Plus nearly every state agency. So we're adding to a proven network. Operationally, right now, the fire department operates with one channel. Police department operates on one channel. EMS is on one channel.
Yeah.
This gives us an opportunity to take one channel and split it up into multiple channels called talk groups.
Right.
So we can have day-to-day operation, we can have special events, we can have administrative, we can have a public works channel. And we
Yeah, it's secure and encrypted and all that good stuff.
it's all encrypted, it's all digital, and it gives us some more capability. If we wanted to add a second channel to our existing systems, it's pretty much impossible because the frequencies are locked down. This gives a lot more versatility with the events that go on in town. And because they're virtualized, there's not an additional cost. If you need 10 talk groups versus 5 talk groups. It's just talking to the state and then looking at the network to see if you can handle it. Program over the air, so we don't bring it.
We'll give one to every town person and one to Mayor Pete so they can call them directly.
It's not uncommon to have a mayor's talker.
So what's the total cost for this? Do you think you're estimating?
For the radio?
Yeah, well, everything, the towers, all that stuff. What do we have to look at?
Well, the towers are gonna make money on.
Yeah.
The estimate for phase 1 is 1.4. What's the number for this?
1.4 is for the dispatch center.
Yeah, I know.
This is being generated by the engineers.
Do we have the cost for this yet?
No.
Well, how many radios do we need for police, fire and DPW? approximately?
Well, we're actually looking, we did inventory our radios, we're actually be cutting down the number of radios we have. But we haven't gotten the exact number yet.
So
it's right there. So
we should work
12,000
on
is
this
all the
number.
radios.
It is, yeah, no, it is actually being worked on currently. I said, the first thing was that we had to identify how many towers were needed, which was
Yeah.
just the end of last week.
Right.
And now it can progress
So that's
into.
per radio.
So there's no estimate at this point.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean,
About how
some rough
long-
numbers, 75 to 85 portables is what the police department currently has. We want to get that. 30 mobiles in the cruisers or the vehicles. And we're probably the largest of them having the bigger fleet. You know, fire department, fire apparatus, and the numbers were roughly
15 mobiles and 20 portables.
And then EMS was at, they have them currently, but there might need to be a couple upgrades. They're at like 16, so they were looking at 3 or 4 maybe being added on. Generally, the subscriber cost is a bigger part of this. The tower sites are obviously huge, but since we're looking at a way that it could either be self-funded or a reduction in the costs through the negotiating contracts. The biggest part of the radio project is going to be the portables and then is it on the last slide there? Consoles. So you want to go to the next slide?
Yeah, so sorry, just right here. So the 13,396 is per. And you're saying you need about 70 of them, 75, 80?
Yeah.
Right? And that's just your department. So this is a very.
That's a non-discounted price.
Sure.
Non-discount, 19% discount.
Right.
On top of everything.
And
Yeah,
how
I mean,
many,
you're looking at
you need 80 for you, how many you guys need?
Oh, we take 20.
That's 100, and then another couple. We need like 120. So it's 1.6 million just on the portables, then we have the mobiles,
Yeah.
which is another 1.5 million. So we're looking at about 3.2 million just for radios.
Yeah. And Matt, if you could give maybe some context too for these numbers, because I know we did it in your original report of how much systems are generally looking at from going with the state versus the house one.
So, again, the portables and mobiles have to be replaced regardless. Portables on a conventional system are cheaper. But you're also then, we would have to take into account maintaining those 5 sites and building those 5 sites out further. So there is an offset in the design cost. Again, I could give you anecdotally while we wait for the ROM quote, but the last project, well, I mean, the last project that I'd worked on this, a conventional refresh was gonna cost $2 million more than joining the state system. A trunk system was gonna cost about $10 million more than joining the existing state system. So it made sense.
$10 million?
10 million.
Yeah, I think that'll hit the media really poorly if we spend 10 million on a radio.
That's why that
and
was,
close the school
that
this
was
year.
discounted. That option was discredited pretty quickly, but.
Yeah.
And there's no need to do it now, because
Right.
you have an
Correct.
option that doesn't involve. So, like I said, now that the system has been identified, now that's where these numbers start coming. But, right, yeah, I think that to both chiefs, tonight isn't for an ask for approval, it's just to kind of let you know what direction it's going in, and so that you can have that preparation.
So we don't pass out on the building.
Yes, right.
Gotcha.
Well, we're not gonna put it in this year's budget anyway.
Right.
It's gonna be, next year's capital budget is gonna be.
Yeah.
And we're gonna have to look at alternate
And you
ways
want
to
fire
finance.
I'm just gonna say.
Hold on.
If you have, for next year, you have a line item for your fire trucks,
Yeah, we're not
so.
paying for that next year.
Yeah.
This will be paid off by then.
Not paying for it, just committing to it.
You can go on to the next slide. So this is the console system, and again, this is not an engineered number, this is a ballpark placeholder number, until the system is actually engineered. 4 consoles, probably looking at about $500,000, again, it could be substantially less, probably not more. Typically, the placeholder numbers are pretty generous, just so that there's not a huge overage on it. And again, this is a project that consoles are due for a refresh anyway. Fire department doesn't currently have consoles, which means if you were to not want to do the combined center and keep infrastructure the way it is, you have to then take the 4 brains and operations of that console and build it out at 2 locations versus 1 location. So that's gonna make your price go substantially higher for console replacements. But again, these are non-engineered placeholders.
And just to
$500,000 here, $500,000 there, it's almost.
So at least you get 4 for this. Yeah, and that's kind of what we've been working on for the last year is we started working up the other options. And once they priced out this one, we was back to the drawing board. So we would start looking up, refreshing all of our conventional, bringing everybody on board. But then you're having to duplicate or triplicate all of that as opposed to just one clean sweep. And that seemed to be where we kept hitting these numbers consistently. Once we knew ballparking, like you said, building our own conventional systems, building our own trunks, or bringing everybody onto one band of the radios, and then having to do 5 tower sites and upgrade those. It just kept putting us back into this was the most economic way that we could do it, the most fiscally responsible. Bringing for you tonight. And again, apologies, we didn't get the last of the site stuff till Wednesday. I think it was Wednesday. I think we were
Friday.
Friday.
The following meeting.
Friday morning, we were meeting with Norcom or Motorola.
So this is also scalable. So when you look to the future of the town, a conventional refresh, as Chief Hank said, you're buying what you have, that's what you have. And to add any capacity or any expansion to it, you have to buy all the infrastructure associated with that. Being that this is all shared resources and scalable, 5 years from now, you decide to have another town entity or the police department gets big enough that they need to add additional channels. It's a matter of just reprogramming the equipment with 0 cost, other than the reprogram of the equipment. So, it's something that you're planning for the future, and it's, 10, 15-year investment down the road. The maintenance and upgrades associated with the system are included, they're built into the state contracting for service and warranties. So you're not, aside from some act of God stuff, where somebody takes a tower down, you're covered. So equipment failures, equipment upgrades, software upgrades are all covered. And the town has the benefit of they're not even responsible for managing those projects. Those are all managed at the state level, and they do the upgrades. You don't have to send somebody out to check on equipment. You don't have to call vendors. You don't have to do any of that because the system becomes part of a whole ecosystem of radio.
We've heard there in the roof town hall a few times with the radio equipment right now, but.
Are there any surrounding municipalities that are looking to get into this that we can partner with to get better contract negotiations? Because it's an additional municipality, or we can move the tower 10 feet to the left and make it pay for fees. I mean, I'm
currently there's not. Fairfield County, most of that county has switched over to the system, but up in the immediate area, Waterbury operates their own system. Some of your resident troopers, Prospect, your Beacon Falls, Oxford, their police officers are already on the system, using state police channels as a resident trooper, but none of them are looking at expanding the system.
What about Southbury?
Southbury is a resident trooper town as well. And they're currently, they have 2 systems.
Right.
They operate on this system, but they also have their own town system for the day to day.
Right.
Okay. What else you got for us? Any more sticker shock?
You go to the next slide. I think that's the end.
No, that's the last slide. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is good.
Thanks, everyone. My longest meeting.
This is, oh.
Nowhere near the record, nowhere near the record.
Yeah, this is really.
Jen, don't-
Oh yeah, hang on, we got, sorry, we're not done.
Oh, we're not done.
No, we're not. All right, go ahead, Mayor.
What else?
Let me show. Yeah, we're still at a meeting. You don't have to stay.
Jeremy.
You don't have to go home.
we gotta keep the meeting going.
Sorry. All right.
All right, so just a summary and just a little overview of where we are. So on all the town budget items, everything in the big book, at the end of the day, we did very well. It's around 1.2 million, under 1% above budget. And in and of itself, it's not a problem. Now, on the capital side, not counting the project we just talked about, we're $1 million more than last year. So that might need a little work. On the Board of Ed side, it's gonna need a lot of work, but we do have some new revenues and some other things. So we're gonna go through that. But on the Board of Ed side, one of the reasons I want to have a couple of meetings is, for example, and we talked about this at the Borough Board, on the facilities side of the equation, over there, they've got, so we have on the town side, Mike Massacott is what they would call a maintainer. They've got 2 maintainers, a lead maintainer, and 2 administrators over him that I believe are not necessary. Now, Mike has the backing of the building inspector, the fire marshal, the town, our 5-year capital committee. So one of the things I want to do, and I'm working on this with Chris, is take facilities away from them, take their capital budget in their budget is $765,000, take that away from them and have the town manage all of those things, put it on our side and reduce their numbers as part of what we give them. There's some other things we can look at that we can put on our side, and we're still gonna give them more money, probably more than we ever gave them before, but there's still gonna be a shortfall. So the main function of this group is to say, okay, for all our new revenues, the mill rate, you put it all together. So we gotta make some decisions. So for example, are we gonna do Boilers Pond next year and give that money to the Board of Ed? How much are we gonna give them? So it's gonna take more than one night. Usually we do all that on one night. I think this year is gonna take 2 or 3 nights. And I think there's gonna be some, serious discussions and some tweaking, adjusting and maneuvering that's more involved than normal. So we don't have to pick it tonight, James, but next
week is final review.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, well, let's just say this. After final review is not gonna be the final review, it's gonna be first review. Okay, we'll call it first review. And then I think we should have 2 more meetings before the end of April. And then,
So if we do the 14th, the 21st, and the 28th,
we need another one.
well, there's no
That's 3
28th
meetings.
listed, and then on
Hold it.
Wednesday the 5th,
Well, okay, if we don't need it, we don't need it, but I think there's gonna be quite a bit of back and forth with the Board of Education.
The consultant that you're using, can't think of his name off the top of my head, but you know what I'm talking about. If he could be brought in to look at
Yeah, he
what
is.
positions are gonna be essential after this facilities handover gets done.
Well, he's not part of facilities, he's.
I
part of
understand that, but
education.
he understands how facilities
Yeah.
work. I hear 2 positions here. I don't know what those positions are, so I can't
So
say.
one of them hasn't worked in 2 years, so forget about
Okay,
it.
so
And the
that's
other
fine.
one administers those
Well, here's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. What I
Yeah.
want to make sure, because you know how much I think this is important.
Yeah.
what I want to make sure of is coming into it, we have a logistical look and an efficiency look at who's gonna do what afterwards.
Let me say this, you're gonna like it.
Okay, all right. You know it's hard to please me.
It's gonna be way better than what it is now.
It's a beautiful thing. I just want to make sure, because if
So
you-
let me
you
say
leave
this.
Positions
Hold
in,
on.
you'll have them for a
I-
long
what I-
time.
What I wanna have, this part I think you're gonna like the best.
Go ahead.
I want the principals to be more involved. So what should happen is this position we're gonna create.
Right.
So like, let's just say the principals have more say,
Mhm.
the interior of the building, the custodians, they do, but when they get to a point where they can't make an electrical repair, right? Okay, so now they're gonna call a new person.
Right.
And he's gonna be picked by the town, he's gonna work to the town, he's gonna report to the town with input from the board of ed. Okay. And I'm just giving you the basic model, we'll tweak it.
Yeah.
But, so now that comes in, we will procure the services for less money and better.
And
like we do with everything else.
none of this one buys the
Right.
regular gas, this one
Right,
buys.
and none of this school does it this way, this school does
Right.
it this way, it's not
Right.
gonna be like that.
Right, no, it can, it can.
Alright, so to bring it back to our meeting dates, we're basically looking at the next 2 Mondays, which we already had, but we're adding 4/28, which is a third Monday that's not currently on our agendas.
And
And
then
then-
if we need more, we'll figure that out next week.
So
Hopefully we don't, maybe we don't.
Yeah, 414 and 421 will both be final review dates.
Okay,
And then 428 will be presentation to the joint boards. 5/7 is published proposed budget.
Thank you, Wayne.
So maybe we could use another week between 428. I don't know how much time, I know by the charter, there is
By the way,
some time in there.
I have no problem moving everything back 1 week.
That's what I was talking
Yeah,
about, yeah.
but not much more than.
No, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
If we can.
So if we have to do that, we could do that.
Right, 1 week is not gonna. Yeah.
Now can we adjourn?
Well,
Now can we adjourn? Are you satisfied, Mayor?
Something else we can do.
9:42, we're done. We cut off the recording and shut it down.
Down, man, shut